It's your brother Zion Lex. Sign up for our online academy, which is Learn Torah Hebrew Academy at patreon.com/Learn Torah. There are several classes that we offer. We offer a Biblical Hebrew 101 class for beginners. We have a Biblical Hebrew 102 class for people who are a little bit more advanced. We also have a weekly Torah class. We also have our Patriarchs of the Covenant course, our Matriarchs of the Covenant course, and a bi-weekly Rabbinical course. All of these courses can be found on Patreon. Again, that's patreon.com/Learn Torah. You guys were definitely in for it. It's a very invasive class. All of our classes are deeply invasive and very, very meticulous to the T when it comes to understanding the culture, the heritage, and the history of our ancient ancestors. So sign up for Biblical Hebrew at patreon.com/Learn Torah. I am your brother, Zion Lex.
Shalom, shalom, family. This is your brother Avdiel Ben Levi, otherwise known as Zion Lex. Go to Amazon and purchase all of my books. Type in my author name, Avdiel Ben Levi, or you can also type in Zion Lex. There you'll find some of my earliest books and my latest works. It was written and engraved. The DNA of Sound, The Star of David Controversy, Ancient Kemet on Trial, Patriarchs of the Covenant, Matriarchs of the Covenant, and my two foremost books that are critically acclaimed on Amazon, and even one has become a bestseller, and that's going to be the Messiah Codex Volume 1 and Messiah Codex Volume 2. So go to Amazon.com today, type in my name, Avdiel Ben Levi, otherwise known as Zion Lex, and there you can purchase all of my books. Peace and shalom, family. All right. Shalom, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well out there. Should be joined shortly by a couple of guests on this topic. By now, many of you should have seen the video that I did with Chief Rabbi Mordechai from the land of Israel on the topic of tinok, shenishba, right, which is an idea and a concept rooted in the oral tradition as to how to approach reacclimating, re-immersing someone into the culture of Torah after having been separated it for a very long time for a number of reasons, but some of the main reasons can be through a person being captured and enslaved. This was a monumental announcement for the Israelite community. I had the honor of having that announcement first spoken and told here, so I'm very, very happy about that. And today I just want to clarify exactly what this actually means for the community and what it means as an idea and as a concept. Just before we kick off, I want to remind everybody to thumb up the video and share the live stream. There still are a lot of people that don't know that I have returned to YouTube. Like I said, I had taken a couple of months off, some much needed time, but I just returned to YouTube, and a lot of people don't know. So please do share the live stream so that people can catch the live stream. To anybody who saw the live stream, do sound off in the comments section and let me know what were some of your thoughts about the live stream between myself and Rabbi Mordechai. I thought it was a great live stream. Judging the feedback, the people absolutely thought it was a great live stream as well. And I'm looking forward, and he's looking forward to bringing the community many, many more impactful and powerful conversations. This particular topic is a very, very important topic. It's one that I've had my mind on for many, many years. But I want to say something that speaks towards the temperature of the Israelite community. Whenever I post a YouTube video, I usually go to the comments. I'll thumb up various comments. I may respond to various comments. But for the most part, I try not to engage the comment section because at times that can get a little wild. And I do way too much throughout the day to really, really give it the time that maybe it needs. So I try not to engage too much. I always tell people the best time to engage with me is during the live stream. If there's something you want to ask me, you could always ask live. I'm one of those platforms that I freely share the link to join the live stream right in the chat. In fact, if everybody looks at the chat right now, there's a link to join the live stream. So I'm not sure why people always wait till the video is published to ask questions when you can join the live stream and ask questions and engage right now. But having said that, I had a number of people reach out to me directly, and I even had some people reach out to me via YouTube comment section. to ask, where can I go to find more on this? Right here. You can't make this up, y'all. I'm gonna drink this water real quick, man. You can't make this up. Sometimes you gotta laugh. I've literally had people that went in the comment section, was like, and where do I get the official information on this? Right here, where it was first officially released. It almost begs the impression for me that people aren't watching the video. They just going, they looking at the thumbnail and going straight to the comment. Like, because there's no way you watch the video and then you're asking, where do we go for the official information, when it's explicitly stated in the video that this is the platform where it is officially being released from. So, you know, just things that let me know that people are not always watching the video, which I always find interesting, because I personally don't comment on videos I don't watch. So having said that, I also received some comments on the YouTube that said, I don't trust it, you know, the Zionists, the Jews, you know, I don't like the idea, and I'm paraphrasing, them determining our status. What? Once more, I know you didn't watch the video, because Chief Rabbi Mordechai made it absolutely clear in the video that this ruling came from himself, the Chief Rabbi of Africa, and several other Black chief rabbis that issued this ruling, that have the power and the authority to issue such a ruling. So it's just ironic to me that when you consider some of the comments, you can see like the contradiction and maybe even the hypocrisy among some of our people, right? Because you'll have a segment of our people that say, you know, I don't want to wait for them to co-sign us. You know, I'm not looking for them to co-sign us, even though the video says that this ruling came from Black chief rabbis in Israel. That's what was spoken in that video. And I'm going to replay the video during this live stream so people can revisit that. But that's what was said in the video. This was not a group of European Jews or Zionists that met in a small alleyway somewhere and decided that we're gonna let you guys come in. These were Black rabbis in Israel and in Africa who have the knowledge base, the study, and the authority to issue such a ruling. And it is binding because they are rabbis. That's what we're talking about here. So what I find interesting, again, as this is developing in our community, is that our people say we don't want the cosign of others, but y'all be looking for it. Because when you ask me, where do I go for the rest of this? You're really trying to ask me, where's the white people that's saying this? I'm smart enough to know that. When y'all ask me, where do I go for the official announcement? I'm smart enough to know some of y'all are still waiting for the cosign of the very people you act like you don't want to be co-signed by, which, you know, speaks to a travesty among our people and maybe even a hypocrisy among our people. But for the most part, it was well received by the masses in our community, and that is chiefly and mostly what I am concerned with. So without any further ado, I'm going to play a couple of minutes from the video between myself and the Chief Rabbi Mordechai. And then I'm going to go into detail. I have a whole PowerPoint. I'm going to go into more detail on the concept and idea of tinok, shenishba, and exactly what that means and the implications for our community. So in the meantime, everybody, throw up the video and share the live stream. If anybody wants to join, the live stream, I am literally taking the link and I'm posting it in the chat. If you want to weigh in on the matter live with me, doesn't matter who you are, you can. And here we go.
Is a time where you have an additional power, additional koach for blessings. So I want to give a blessing to Rabbi Zion Lex, to the entire African American community, that, you know, that we in his lifetime, you know, achieve, you know, our potential, and we're able to identify what makes us unique, and to be able to contribute it on an interpersonal level, on a communal level, and on the international level. And that we are able to see the different experiences of pain, of sadness that we've had throughout our history in North America, and to be able to expand our consciousness back to the land of Israel, and to go through that process through Africa, through the migrations from the west of Africa to the Central Africa with Congo and the Bantus, all the way back to Eretz Israel, the Holy Land, because many of us, we are descendants of the Israelite tribes that were put on the slave ships on the west of Africa.
When you realize bloating and discomfort don't have to be routine, everything changes.
That's who we are. We have the Halachic status of being children. It's a term, but I'm saying in English, it's a term that is for children that are captured by non-Jews and raised in a non-Jewish environment.
Stop right there. And I have to stop you. Why I must stop you? Because this is groundbreaking, and I want to make sure everyone is processing what you just said. Now, we spoke behind the scenes about talking about this publicly. And all right, I'm going to pause that right there, because I'm just absolutely sure that at that moment in time, what the rabbi had just said had went over many heads in the community. And so that's why I decided to pause it. So I'm going to replay it right now. I'm going to let the rest play, but I want everybody to listen carefully to the ruling and the details of the ruling, and more importantly, who it's coming from, and how the details also explain that this does not mean that we are coming into conversion. We are not converts. We are bloodline descendants of the children of Israel. Everyone, please listen carefully. For some time now, this is the very first time that you're saying this publicly on this platform. So I want you to rewind a bit and say that again. What is the status that we enjoy? Please do repeat yourself.
Yeah, so in terms of like, anytime you want to classify something or understand something or bring the different laws of the Torah to something, it has to have a classification, right? Whether it's something that, like, say if we're talking about inanimate objects, right? So something that is owned by a person or not owned by a person, something that was left behind versus something that was lost, right? There's all different types of statuses. So when it comes to individuals and their relationship to the Torah, there's all different classifications, because there have been so many different situations throughout history. And so the rabbis have a particular status of, it's an overall term. The overall term is basically children that were a child that was captured by non-Jews, okay, and raised in a non-Jewish environment. And so they don't know that they're Jewish. They don't know that they're Israelites. That individual or group of people have no idea, because they were captured and put in, whether it's slavery or indentured servitude, whatever they are, but they have no idea where they come from. So that's the classification that African Americans would follow underneath, that went through chattel slavery, that came on slave ships and were took from the coast of Africa and were Igbo, but there's many other tribes too that were Israelite tribes, not just the Igbo tribes. And we came to North America, and North America strategically wiped away our history. The whole education system, all their historians, all their data, all their statistics was all strategically designed to take a group of people and deny their existence, and to basically make them into the first Americans, right? Which are people that don't have any identity outside of that land, right? And whatever that land has imposed on them. And so the reason why that is significant, because then there's certain halachic responsibilities that the Jewish community has to help those people come back, right? To help those people be able to return to who they are, and they're not converts.
That's right.
We're not converts. I am not a convert.
Thank you. Okay, I want to rewind that part again, because there were people that asked me, does this mean that we're going to be converts? And I said no. And they was like, but in the video, the rabbi said we're going to be converts. I said, what video was y'all watching? What video was y'all watching? When did the rabbi say that this means we're going to be converts? This is what I'm talking about when I say a lot of confusion that happens in the community is simple. People do not have common sense, nor do people listen. The rabbi absolutely did not say that this means that we are converts. There's an art to listening, and apparently not everybody is artistic. But here we go.
The reason why that is significant, because then there's certain halachic responsibilities that the Jewish community has to help those people come back, right? To help those people be able to return to who they are, and they're not considered, they're not converts.
That's right.
We're not converts. I am not a convert.
Thank you.
I am a person who went through a halachic process of reconnecting, meaning I did the bris milah, I mean circumcision. I went into the mikveh. I went and said the bracha inside the mikveh, and I had every intentions to keep all the Torah commandments, written and rabbinical. When I was in that, when I went into the mikveh, that was my intentions, and that's what I'm still holding by today. However, it's not the same process of a person who is from a foreign nation who's joining the Jewish people. I'm in the same context as the Jewish people that were in the desert before they came in this portion. Before they went into Eretz Israel, they had to recircumcise. They had to circumcise themselves. So I did the same thing that they did in the generation of Yehoshua, right? Ben Nun. I did the same thing. So the conversation is now to spread this idea, in the Jewish community, because no one has education on each other. You know what I mean? There's a huge gap in terms of knowledge between all different groups in Judaism, let alone people like ourselves who are on the outside completely, right? So, so that's part of my work, is to bring that awareness inside the Jewish community and the African American community, and to create guidelines to help people return. Now, the thing is, it's not just about, having a bris milah, which is a circumcision or drawing blood, whatever the situation is, because most of us were already circumcised, in North America. So we're talking about the process of drawing blood. Right. But the thing is saying that the issue is being able to is to regain the process of taking on the entire Torah.
That's right.
And to take on all the requirements and all these things. And it's not just enough to do those actions. You have to reconnect to the people in Africa.
That's right.
You have to reconnect. There's a kolana ceremony that they have in Igbo land. Right. That's going to be part of the requirement to complete this process. So people are going to have to make the pilgrimage to Nigeria and to those other places and reconnect to those tribes there, and to give charity and to go through the process of reacclimation. For some people, may even take on Igbo names, these types of things. But it's not complete unless we connect to Africa, because in order to go
where the atrocity took place initially.
Exactly. And from there, that's a process leading back to Eretz Israel, the Holy Land, where I'm at now. So it's a big work. I'm already planning my trip to go to Nigeria. I plan to stay there for an extended period of time and to learn with the elders there, among many other things. And so it's part of the process of returning. Is not just the circumcision and going to the mikveh, but actually reconnecting to those African tribes that are and connect to those traditions. Because one of the challenges that the Chief Rabbi Pinchas Eliyahu points out in a Pesach that he wrote a few years back, which was a response to Rabbi Chaim Kanetsky in Blessed Memories Pesach on the Igbo tribes being Israelites. Rabbi Pinchas adds along with that in his writings that it's not enough just for people to go through the process of entering the covenant. They also have to connect to their ethnic origins to be able to bring those traditions into their life. Now, however, in North America, we're going to have our own traditions, because as much as we're going to connect to Africa and make that relationship, that kinyan between us. and in those surrounding places, Ghana for some people as well. But it's also that we have to take, our culture, which is largely hip hop culture, and we're going to have to be able to take all the elements of hip hop culture, and we're going to have to hold them up to the halacha in the Torah, right? And so whether it's the way we dress, whether it's the way we talk, whether it's the way that we eat, what we eat, when we eat, how we do, all those different things, we're going to have to take those elements and be able to elevate them, right? Many of the songs that you hear a lot of my Ashkenazi brothers sing on Shabbat and different things, a lot of those things were, they learned by watching the non-Jews. Same thing with Sephardic brothers. They learned by the non-Jews, songs, different traditions, certain foods, meals. So we should be taking our culture and to be able to re-explain the Black experience through halachic terms, right? And to elevate our whole experience from the frames of halakha. So yes, we are going to connect with the Africans, and we're going to connect with the Igbo people specifically and those surrounding Israelite tribes. But what's more important, arguably, is to be able to take Black history and to elevate it to a place of Kedusha, in a place that we can see God's love, God's continuance, and God's promise to his children, even the ones that didn't even know who they were, and be able to move forward into a new era.
That is so powerful. All right. So for those of you who are just now coming, I'm revisiting the video that I posted last night, which was a snippet of a conversation that I had with Chief Rabbi Mordechai from Israel, where he clarified that there was a ruling issued by a number of chief Black rabbis from Israel all the way to America and all the way to Africa that ruled that many Black people in America and in the Caribbean who come from the transatlantic slave trade, whose DNA can attest to that, many of them are actually bloodline Israelites. And the ruling actually outlines a process by which a person can reconnect to their ancestral heritage formally. Now, the first thing that I want to address before I go into great detail on this particular topic is the need for there to be a process of return. Why is that important? There are a lot of people in the Israelite community that argue, I don't need no white rabbi or no Black rabbi, no white teacher or no Black teacher to tell me something I already know. I know I'm an Israelite, so I'm gonna just return. I'm gonna just keep this Torah, and I'm gonna just do nothing. Because when you look around the Israelite community, especially those of us that have been around for a couple decades in knowledge of ourselves as Israelites, what's one of the major things we notice? Just as fast as they come is even as faster as they go. Why is it that so many people come into the Israelite way of thinking and practice, and then a couple years later, maybe even the same year, a couple months later, nobody heard from them? When they do pop up, now they got an ankh, they hotepping. What happened? Why are there so many people that come into the Israelite community and leave? I'll tell you what happened. I'll tell you why that is. Because there's no genuine process to vet how people come into the community. People will come in and behave any way that they want, and they'll exit even faster as soon as they realize that they can't behave any way that they want. I said a long time ago, and I'll say it again, when fast food restaurants have a better system in place of vetting how people come and work for them, how people come among them, we're in trouble. Because even McDonald's has a process that they vet employees. Where have you worked? What's your background? In the Israelite community, you mean to tell me 4 YouTube videos, a couple of Facebook posts, viral TikTok videos, and now I'm an Israelite overnight? Without needing to do anything, I'm an Israelite overnight because that's just what I am? No, that's not how it works. in the Torah of our fathers, in the Torah that the Creator gave to us, there is delineated there that there is a process of return that is extremely and highly imperative and necessary. You don't know how people are before they come into this Israelite truth and awakening. And when some of them come in, do I got to go in and tell y'all some of the things that we see and we witness? So come on. If you are not understanding this, maybe you're not there yet and you're learning, but I'm assuming most mature adults perfectly understand what I'm saying. There is a process to returning to this. And this is what the chief black rabbis in part are ruling upon. Not simply and just to acknowledge that many of the people in the Americas, in the Caribbean, and in the UK and in Canada are bloodline descendants of the Israelites, but also to outline a process of return that will ensure that once people come in, they're doing the right thing and they're on the right track. This is what we need, everyone, to get to the next level. Because as a person like myself that's been in this community for 30 years and has barely seen us move from here to here, we have a problem. There is no real margin of growth in the Israelite community, in part because there is no real process for vetting who can come in. Until that changes, not only will we continue to see a small margin of growth, but as many of the camps demonstrate, you may even see regression of growth. So I hope everyone that is mature, intelligent, and spiritual enough will understand the things that are being said by the chief rabbi and myself and several other rabbis. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on the topic, everyone, so that this matter is extremely clarified. And I want you all to take some notes. And I definitely would appreciate if you guys thumb up the video and share the live stream. So here we go. Let me just make sure that's on the screen. All right, perfect. Perfect. We ready. So as many of you should be well aware by now that are subscribed to this channel. By the way, don't just subscribe to the channel, everybody. Make sure that you hit the notification bell. Why you want to make sure you hit that notification bell? Because just because you're subscribed doesn't mean that you're aware of every time that we're going live. Make sure you hit and you press that notification bell. That way you know when we're live and you do not miss the live stream. So take the time to do that. As you guys can see in the flyer or in the thumbnail for today's video, it says captured and enslaved. In Hebrew, it says tinok, shenishba, African Americans as the lost tribes of Israel. I'm going to take you guys into a deeper dive of exactly what this idea and concept means and the far and vast implications of this rabbinical ruling for our community that is literally about to change the game, not just for the Israelite community, but the way in which the world perceives us as a people and as a nation. Here we go. The term tinok shenishba in Hebrew, literally captured infant, is a term that refers to a Jew who sins as a result of having been raised without sufficient knowledge and understanding of Torah. The term originates from a theoretical discussion in the Talmud regarding a Jew who was kidnapped by Gentiles as an infant and therefore sinned inadvertently for lack of Halachic knowledge. In contemporary Orthodox Judaism, its status is widely applied to unaffiliated Jews or Jews educated in modern Jewish denominations. And let me explain a little bit before I even move on. And so this general term, everyone, tinok shenishba, it describes someone that was captured and enslaved. You know, like our ancestors, you know, like the transatlantic slave trade. And a result of being captured, and as a result of being captured and enslaved, our people removed from their name, their identity as a people, their heritage, their culture, their language, stripped of all knowledge of self, and then placed in lands far removed from the land of their origin. And as we know, we have been here 400 plus years. So, what happens with an identity and a cultural foundation of those people? It pretty much crumbles with very few surviving remnants. So, from a Torah perspective, how does such a person become liable to the commandments when they are first completely unaware of their identity as a people? So the sages and rabbis of old had already pointed out what they knew would be a reality for our people and describe it in legalese or in law legal terms as tinok, shenishba. What should we do with someone who is captured, and as a result of being captured and enslaved, what do we do with such a person in terms of how to reacclimate and their return to the culture, heritage, and identity of their ancestors? So here we go. Etymologically, the term tinok shenishba, everyone, is short for tinok shenishba ben hanochrim, which translates as an infant captured among Gentiles, right? Or and consequently raised among Gentiles. This is a case where the individual in question is not responsible for his actions and sins due to his being raised in a place or situation where the law is unknown to him. You know, like us, many of us came into this way of life. Many of you came into this way of life in your 20s, your 30s. Every day I'm running into people that tell me, I just woke up last week, in their 40s, in their 50s, in their 60s, in their 70s, in their 80s. What happens with such a person? Should they be liable for all of the years of living without Torah knowledge and practice? Does that mean that they are wicked? Absolutely not. The rabbis and sages of old, foreseeing that this was inevitable, seeing that it was prophesied in our scripture, and seeing that as history evolved, they saw these things occurring, they came up with this terminology and a way to address it legally. So I'm going to continue. This is a case where the individual in question is not responsible for his actions and sins due to his being raised in a place or situation where the law is unknown to him. An individual doesn't have to have been captured as an infant to fall within the definition of tinok shenishba. I'm going to say that. I'm going to reassert that again. An individual doesn't have to have been captured as an infant to fall within the definition of a tinok shenishba, but rather, even if the child was raised without religious guidance, it would still be considered a tinok shenishba. All right. Justification. Because a tinok shenishba was not raised with proper guidance towards appreciation of this way of life, law, and ritual, they are not accountable for not following Torah. I want to emphasize that before our audience right now. Many of our people are of the belief, I want to say even misguided, in saying that or thinking that, oh my God, all these years, I didn't really know the Father. Like, damn, man, like I feel bad. And you know what? As a really righteous resolve, I get it. But from a legal perspective, you are not to be held accountable. Some people say ignorance of the law is no excuse. Where'd you get that from? Because I know I didn't read that anywhere in the Torah. We be using terms in the Israelite community that don't even have a root, branch, or stem in our culture. Because in the words of our rabbis and sages, ignorance of the law is a very serious matter, a highly significant matter, and it applies to someone in cases like a person being captured and enslaved and their identity being erased from them. Well, yes, their ignorance of the law is a reason to justify why they have not kept the laws of God. And then there has to be a process outlined that defines how they return to this way of life for the true and living King and Creator. As we continue. If this Jew or Israelite would encounter and refine his brothers and the Torah, he must be welcomed back and taught the correct way to live as a Jew. You know, every time somebody tells me that I don't need to read the oral tradition, I'm always reminded when I'm reading the oral tradition of one more reason why all of us need to read it. Our rabbis and sages have addressed things from long ago that we are now encountering and dealing with, and many teachers in this community don't have a clue as to how to address. This is why, to this day, I will always say I lean upon the Torah and the words of the sages, the words of our great rabbis who came to interpret it via the power and authority vested in them as teachers and leaders under the law of Moses. As we continue. So this would be essentially, from a purely legally stance, this would be the halachic status of every Israelite in the world whose ancestors came to the Americas, North and South, the Caribbeans, Canada, the UK, and wherever the transatlantic slave trade diaspora has carried them. This would be the status that we enjoy. It is known as tinok shenishba. And this status was first coined, pointed out, and outlined in the Gemara, or i.e. the Talmud. I'm going to take a moment for a second to read it. But just before I read it, we're going to have a quick commercial break. In the meantime, I'm going to remind everybody to thumb up the live stream and share it so that people know that we are live.
Caribbean kitchen food, where the spice and sense. Yeah, from jerk to curry, give your dishes a chance. Oh, seasoning so vibrant, like the tropical breeze. Oh, for the finest flavors, it's a culinary tease. Oh, stay with the sunshine in every single bite. Caribbean kitchen food, more flavors are just right. With every pinch and sprinkle, a journey will begin to the islands of delight. Oh, 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 oh.
All right. So I'm going to continue reading from this. So under Torah law, the halakhic status that African Americans and Afro-Caribbeans essentially that can trace themselves back to not only West Africa, but specifically Igbo land, the halakhic status that we fall under that acknowledges not only our right of return as Israelites, but acknowledges also that we are Israelites is known as tinok shenishba. The concept of tinok shenishba is first mentioned in the Talmud in Tractate Shavua 5a. The Gemara states that responsibility for inadvertent transgression is only placed on an individual who knew the correct law at 2 points or junctions in time, before the transgression and the remembrance after the transgression, and forgot the law sometime in between. If that individual knew the law, subsequently forgot it, and never again remembered or received a reminder, they would be an unwitting transgressor. Similarly, if an individual never knew the law in the first place and then subsequently learned the law, they would also be an unwitting transgressor. This latter example will fall under the category of a tinok shenishba. Again, why is this ultimately unique and highly significant for us? Is because not only does it acknowledge that a great majority of African Americans who have ancestors that trace all the way back to Igbo land are bloodline descendants of some of the lost tribes of Israel, but it also outlines what should be our process of return that ensures our success in the learning and practice of this culture and way of life. And it is the latter for me, that it not only is an acknowledgement, everyone, this halakhic status should not be celebrated by the Israelite community chiefly and simply because, oh, we're finally being acknowledged. No, this should be celebrated by our community for what I want to say is the most important part, which is the way in which it outlines how we return. That's important, that there are guidelines in place to ensure that people are not coming into the community and ripping, running, and tearing it up, ensuring that when people come, they don't just go, at least without sufficient and high and great knowledge. And I'll continue. It had long been spoken in our tradition that our people would go into captivity and would ultimately be scattered throughout the world and would be deemed lost to their culture, lost to their identity, and lost to their national heritage. In fact, let's get a little bit more specific. The rabbis and sages of the Talmud, you know, the book a lot of Israelites say we shouldn't read. The rabbis and sages of the Talmud not only acknowledge that the vast majority of Israelites were kicked out and expelled from the land and went into the diaspora in many parts of the world, but they specifically highlight that the masses of our people went into Africa. I was the very first person to show this in the Israelite community, and I want to show you this again right now. In Sanhedrin 94a, it is asked by Marzutra, to where did Sennacherib, who was the king of Assyria, exile the 10 tribes? Marzutra said, Afriqui, the Hebrew way of saying Africa. That's in Sanhedrin 94a in the Babylonian Talmud. You know, the same Talmud Israelites telling you not to read? It's right in there. Acknowledged by the rabbis and sages that the 10 lost tribes went into Africa. That the 10 lost tribes went into Africa. Let's continue. In some of the post-Second Temple works, such as Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, this is also told. I had brought this out in the community in the year 2016 during a live stream with my brother Chief Uzael. I've seen many people share it since, and in a way that doesn't even reflect what it's saying. So I want to be able to not only point out that I was the very first person to share this, but I want to share this in a way that is not only impactful and meaningful, but that is true to what is being demonstrated here. In Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, it describes the blessing that Noah gives to his 3 children. Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, everyone, is a midrashic work. What is the midrash? The midrash are a series of Torah exegesis as expounded by some of the greatest rabbis and sages post-Second Temple era that are commenting on chiefly and mainly the Torah. In this work of Rabbi Eliezer, I want everyone to listen carefully to what he says about the color of the descendants and children of Shem. It says, he blessed Shem, black and desirable. He blessed Ham, black like the raven, and he blessed Japheth, white. I even took the time to highlight the Hebrew. Leshem ulbana shakorim. Shem and his sons, black. I should start here. Barek leshem ulbana shakorim. He blessed Shem and his sons, shakorim, black in the plural, because not only was Shem blessed to be black, but his sons as well. Shem is from where the biblical Israelites descend from. Hence, Israelites are referred to as being a Semitic people, coming from the Hebrew term Shem, which denotes our ancestry as coming from the line of Shem. I want everybody to be clear on something. This is in the works of the rabbis. You know, the works that Israelites teachers be telling y'all we don't need to read. Don't read it. That's not good. It don't got no good information in there. But those same Israelites that's telling you it don't got no good information in these works When I share them first, they rip them from my page, put their name on it, and begin to share it. Somebody please make that make sense for me. I'm trying to figure that out. That's another thing that's lacking in this community, humility. Because if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But why say that I'm wrong for going into the oral tradition and bringing out his truths? But when you see something that you like that I share from it, you erase my name from the share, place your names on it, and then begin to share it like you discovered it. What I'm really trying to say to y'all is a lot of y'all Israelite teachers are charlatans, and they are liars, and the truth is not in them. But one thing about the truth, it's always going to stand, and it's always going to be attested to. And a charlatan will always be revealed for who they are as we continue.
What happened to the history of Africa?
I'm going to play a video for you guys of an African scholar speaking about the diaspora of Igbo Jews that made their way to the Americas, and how the Bible is a testimony to that fact alongside the history. I want everyone to please turn the volume all the way up on your video and listen very keenly and very clearly. By the way, family, thumb up the video and share the live stream and show your love to this platform by donating. Time and time again, this platform has proved that we are dedicated to bringing the truth and changing the game. And since this platform started, that's exactly what we've been doing. And the best way that you can help me help this is to support it. That way it continues. I'm not asking you to support something that's fruitless, that's not doing something remarkable and game-changing for the community. I'm asking you to do something that is remarkable and game-changing. But it takes your help and your effort to help take it to the next level. I'm in part stifled growth-wise because I need the help of the community to help bring this to the next level. With that being said, family, along with coming here for the information and the knowledge, don't forget to support. Here we go.
Africa has not been well told. That is a forbidden history. This is what we're going to look into. When I talk to a lot of the Igbos today, they seem to understand contemporary history, but the ancient history is sort of distorted. It's not taught. Until the lion tells his story, the glory of the hunt will glorify the hunter. Our history has been corrupted or perverted. To explain how the Israelites moved into West Africa and set up their own kingdoms. This was a very powerful kingdom in the ancient times. There was a lot of trade that went on with the people of Israel into West Africa.
Ye historians, especially Igbo historians, you have a lot of work to do.
Would that be deliberate? Would that be like just mispresentation? One thing is clarified. That the Israelites ruled Africa for hundreds and hundreds of years. If you do not know who you are, people will define you by who you are not. Then we are about today to correct some of those mistakes. In this meeting today, I will be explaining the tribe of Judah, the Yahudim tribe, which are in the west.
All right. I'm going to let that video play one more time, and I'm going to ask everybody to listen very, very carefully. After that video plays, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail into not only the rabbinical ruling, but the Igbo connection between us in the Americas, the Caribbeans, and wherever we may be found throughout the diaspora. But once again, before we do that, everybody, it takes your support to keep this thing going. You got to show your love. You got to show your support. We can't just show up for the information, and then once we got the information, we run away and we don't support. And then we wonder why our community cannot raise but only so far. You got to support platforms like this, everybody. All right, you got to support platforms like this. By the way, I also took the link to the live stream so that those who would like to join the conversation at a time where I'm going to engage you, that you can join the conversation and we can have a powerful conversation. So the link to join the live stream is up. Everybody, do show your love and do show your support. Here we go.
What happened to the history of Africa has not been well told. That is a forbidden history. This is what we're going to look into. When I talk to a lot of the Igbos today, they seem to understand contemporary history, but the ancient history is sort of distorted. It's not thought. Until the lion tells his story, the glory of the hunt will glorify the hunter. Our history has been corrupted or perverted. To explain how the Israelites moved into West Africa and set up their own kingdoms. This was a very powerful kingdom in the ancient times. There was a lot of trade that went on with the people of Israel in the West Africa.
Ye historians, especially people historians, you have a lot of work to do.
Whether it be deliberate, whether it be by just misrepresentation.
One thing is clarified that
The Israelites ruled Africa for hundreds and hundreds of years.
if you do not know who you are, people will define you by who you are not.
And we are about today to correct some of those mistakes.
also wrong.
In this meeting today, I will be explaining the tribe of Judah, the Yahudim tribe, which are in the west.
All right, we're going to move to the next slide to talk about some of the Igbo Jews of Nigeria. Now, at a time in history, it was once argued that the Igbo tribes of Nigeria may not necessarily be the actual descendants. That time has gone and passed. It is now widely known and acknowledged, even in mainstream Judaism, and is set and essentially by scholars and historians world over, that the Igbo Jews of Nigeria are absolutely 100% descendants of the lost tribes of Israel. It even reflects in their DNA. That's why many of you who recently took to African Ancestry and many of the other DNA stations throughout the world, many of you found that you had a bloodline relation to many peoples in the Middle East. Many of you seen Israel in your DNA. Many of you seen places where it is known that Israelites went into captivity right in your DNA. And that's extremely important, everyone. Extremely important. So I definitely want to say to everyone that this is a huge announcement. In fact, I'm going to take the opportunity to have join us for a moment our sister Nasika Hadassah. Shalom, Nasika. How you doing?
Shalom, Nasi. Shalom, Mishpaka. It's actually perfect timing. I've just been running around multitasking, getting ready for Shabbat. But
Nice.
I had to come in at this time. And around 2021, I traced my DNA through 23andMe. And I did find out that my lineage is Igbo. And that was very affirming for many reasons. I have shared before in some of our classes that as a child, I was always very enamored with, just voraciously devouring slave narratives as well as Holocaust narratives. So what was interesting is for some reason, I always say even our fascinations and interests and obsessions as children often testify to the greater purpose that Hashem has for us later in life. So for some reason, as a child, I was always drawn to reading the slave narratives. And I would literally go to the library and I would always check out one of each. I would get like a Holocaust book and a book about the slave narratives. And reading about these worlds, I was always fascinated by the commonalities in the history. However, not knowing at the time that this was actually, I think my magnetism to these stories was that inner spark within me that was drawing me to this affirmation of my ancestral history and my inherent identity. And so I also highly recommend for those watching, if you're able to watch the documentary Re-Emerging, which is about the Igbo Jews in Nigeria and how they observe the Halachic. It's very moving, very profound. And so one of the things I'm so excited about with this announcement of our status, our Halachic status, being verified and validated and legitimized through the incredible work and efforts of the African rabbis and the collective of diasporic rabbis and authorities in our communities is we know, and I believe about 2022, if I'm correct, about the Halachic ruling validating the identity and legitimization of the Igbo Jews. But now, for all of us as African Americans to be validated and verified in that way, of course, is a huge victory. And for me, having read this history so intensively as a child, I'm always fascinated by how these so-called slave narratives and so-called Negro spirituals affirmed our identity. And to me, it's clear that our ancestors enslaved here in the Americas, in the diaspora, knew we were the biblical Hebrews.
That's right.
And so many people, historians and scholars, do note these parallels and, of course, scriptural references in, for instance, the Negro spirituals. But they kind of frame it as, oh, well, of course, those who were enslaved in the Americas from Africa, the African descendants, were drawing parallels from their experience to the Jewish experience. And there's this idea of this othering, this separation, even though the commonalities are acknowledged and admitted, it's not testifying to the fact that the reason these references were so strong and so potent within our narratives and our spirituals and our traditions was because this was our identity. We weren't simply drawing parallels to the experience of the Jews as a people other than us. We were understanding that this was the experience of our ancestors. And just as we know that through the understanding of Gilgalim, reincarnation, we understand that we, even those of us alive today, were at Mount Sinai. So the experiences of our ancestors in all of our exiles and captivity, from Egypt to Babylon to Assyria, and certainly in the Americas, this is Hagilgulim. This is the cycles of these same experiences that we are experiencing in a way that transcends time. And so our experiences of enslavement and oppression and brutality in the Americas is no different than our experiences of cruelty through the slavery in Egypt and all of our periods of exile. And so we see this evidence of our identity being verified in the Negro spirituals popularized by the likes of Mahalia Jackson and Paul Robeson and Marian Anderson. And it's funny that so many of us in the so-called Hebrew community have a sort of contention against the oral tradition, but this is our oral tradition.
Come on.
These folk tales, these songs that are encoded, even when we think of the freedom quilts that our ancestors would sew that were secretly maps to freedom, maps to show us the way to north, to freedom. Those encoded songs, those ways that we communicated were not only relevant for that immediate time and the freedom that we were seeking, but a testament to the cyclical nature of our identity. Also, the works of Toni Morrison are replete with this understanding. In Beloved and Sula, and certainly the Song of Solomon,
Teach.
we see that these folk tales, such as literally our enslaved ancestors have this folk history of the slaves who flew back to Africa, who flew back to freedom. We can also think about Igbo landing. But the idea of Solomon flying, like all of this even, I think, can definitely be understood to be very Kabbalistic. A lot of these songs have very potent Kabbalistic meaning. Even some of the songs, such as I Know I've Been Changed and There's a Leak in This Old Building by LaShawn Pace. When you think about it, you can understand there's potent esoteric symbolism in these songs. We know we're more familiar with, of course, Go Down Moses, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, Motherless Child, How I Got Over, which is interesting because as popularized by Mahalia Jackson, How I Got Over, it literally speaks to the Hebrew identity. The very word Hebrew testifies to us crossing over from, our identity, even the crossing over of Yaakov into Israel. And of course, Abraham having crossed over into the identity of being a Hebrew, being our patriarch, Abraham Avinu. I think even of Nina Simone's Sinner Man and the rocks crying out, the rock that's bleeding, and all of these things, the old blues songs, the intersection of blues and gospel being our version of Lamentations.
That's right.
So, when we know in the Tehillim, when it says that we were asked to sing the songs of Zion in the land of captivity in Babylon, how can we sing the songs of Hashem in the land of our captivity? This was how we did it. This is how we affirmed our identity and encoded these narratives, these biblical narratives, the narratives of Torah, to pass down to our children. Hence, why this was our oral tradition. Even the Haggadah, the Pesach Seder, the Seder Pesach is in itself a slave narrative. And Frederick Douglass, in his narratives, certainly was very explicit about this. We can even look to, most recently, to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., testifying that he has seen the Promised Land.
Come on.
So when we think about him in that kind of quasi-messianic position himself for our people, going back even to Harriet Tubman herself, Grandma Moses. These are no accidents. This is not merely our ancestors taking on these monikers because it seems to fit. It seems to be an appropriate parallel. It is because it is what it is. So another poignant thing that is recurrent throughout many slave narratives is the othering of other Africans. And this is an often overlooked point that can easily be missed. When you read slave narratives, often you'll see them refer to Africans. And so the common mind nowadays, when we're being sold this narrative, oh, we all African, black is black, we're all kin. But we're not understanding that even the African continent is comprised of many countries and even more innumerable tribes. That's right. No continent in the earth has ever been a monolith where, you don't go to Asia and they're like, oh, yes, my Japanese brother, the Koreans talking about, yes, the Japanese are my brother. We all the same. No,
that's right.
Tribe is important. Lineage, heritage is important. And, when we understand the difference between the tribes, we can look no further than the narrative of Oluda Equiano, who is very clear about even his shock being on the slave ship with other Africans and their customs and their ways and even their immodesty and the defilement of their idolatry. He wrote explicitly about their ways, the other Africans, the other tribes. We're not the same. They not like us. We have to understand everybody black is not us. And so, we have to understand that even on the plantation, when there were Africans that were not Hebrews, they made that
What
clear.
happened to the history?
Oh, that's that African over there, fresh off the boat. It wasn't just because they were fresh off the boat. It was because they knew, oh, he's not from our lineage. He's not a Hebrew.
That's a fact.
So, I'm just excited about this, coming to be validated so publicly and so prolifically, because, it's something we always knew. Our ancestors always knew. These are our oral traditions that always testified to this truth. And now that it is being acknowledged is such a profound victory. So thank you. It's such an
Thank you.
exciting and prodigious announcement. And I'm just glad to share my little thoughts.
Thank you. You know, it's funny. You brought up Igbo landing. That's something that I have in the presentation to show in a couple of moments. Right, I actually have that to show. So I'm gonna get into that in a couple of seconds, and when I get there, you can help to unravel that a little bit yourself. But where I'm at right now is to talk about what we are coming to know, which is the international and global acknowledgement that the Igbo people are certainly a lost tribe of Israel. And where things get really, really interesting now is in the connection of knowing that many of us that came on those slave ships came from Igbo land. And it landed in the Americas, North and South, and the Caribbean. Many of us, when we did our DNA, showed that we came from Igbo land. So there was a conversation a couple years ago that, African Americans are Jews? You kidding me? Really? Now it's a known fact that the Igbo people are part of what is called the Lost Tribes of Israel. It has been a known fact that a huge percentage of African Americans and African Caribbeans have Igbo blood in their DNA. So who's laughing now?
Absolutely. And, even the idea, I don't know if you may have brought this out earlier in the broadcast, but even the idea of the names of the enslaved on the slave ships were Hebrew names. The idea that there are maps that, of course, have been tucked away and hidden in it, in history, but the maps that showed exactly where the Hebrews had migrated and where the Hebrew populations were most dense, and some of the sordid history that a lot of us don't want to acknowledge. We know that there's kind of always been this tension between the so-called African community and the so-called African American community. And I know even growing up, I would, always kind of hear, oh, those Africans, they don't like us. And there was always this feeling of tension. But then, of course, especially in the early 2000s, people started jumping on the bandwagon. Oh, let's go back home to Ghana. We're all Black. And especially, I think what is most insidious is that our people specifically are being targeted to return to the very idolatry and pagan religions that enslaved us. And so our people are being targeted, especially through celebrities and public figures, to follow Yoruba traditions. But we don't know enough of our history to understand that the Biafra conflict was literally CIA funded for the Yoruba to exterminate Igbos in Nigeria. So it was a civil war, but it was a spiritual war, because these people that's not like us, these other Africans, this other tribe was enlisted to take us out. And so it's so interesting that now, only a few years after the Biafra conflict, then we have our people being aggressively seduced into Yoruba Orisha worship, Ifa. A few years ago, it was the Hoteps, the Kemetic movement was real big. But then now, it's like, oh yeah, this is what our ancestors was doing. Put that white man's Bible down. Don't be paying any minds of that Bible. This is what you're supposed to be doing. And we are being collectively seduced right back into the idolatry and defilement that took us into captivity. And it's so interesting that, it really seems very systematic. It really seems very intentional that we're being targeted in this way. So it's like, oh yeah, we're all African. We're great. We love each other. We're all one. But even on the continent, the Africans will tell you, we're not all one. We never have been. And including, you know, what's interesting.
That tell you, I didn't know I was African until I came to America.
Mm.
And that's not because America is my first time hearing the term Africa or African, but in Africa, we acknowledge ourselves through our tribal names.
Exactly. Yes.
Even when you go to places like Nigeria, not every Nigerian will tell you, I'm Nigerian. You know how many tribes in Nigeria?
That's right.
That's what they represent.
Yes.
So what we living in America and obviously lacking identity suffer from is the knowledge of the complexity of identity outside of America, how complex that can get. You speak to the average white person right here in America. What are you? You're not going to hear them say I'm white. Speak to the average black person here in America that doesn't have roots as far as they know outside. They're going to be like, oh, I'm a black American. And no white person going to tell you that. They're going to tell you I'm Russian. They're going to tell you I'm Italian. They're going to know who their people are and they're going to locate it. We just going to say we black. Even among Africans indigenously in Africa, you seldom will ever hear them say, I'm African. Some of them don't even go by the state and country names that we know. They go on by their tribal names. So what you're saying right now is so important, and I apologize for cutting you.
Oh, no. I mean, that, you know, you brought it out. We don't have that understanding of the importance of tribal identification here because our identity was deliberately stolen. So, as you said, you know, you ask the average so-called white person, I'm Irish, you know, I'm Italian. You know, they tell you that quick in a hurry.
Real quick.
And they ain't even been on the
continent. They even be offended when you call them white. White. I told an Italian dude not too long ago, oh, you white, right? It's like, white? Dude, I'm Italian. I'm like, oh, my bad. You look white. You know?
Exactly. And even, you know, what's even a more poignant point too is even among them, that tribal loyalty, you know, they are not looking at each other as the same. The Irish and the Italians were going to war, especially in this country. You talking about New York. That was the gangs of New York. The Irish and the Italians, the mobs and the mafias, they're not going to sit there and act like, oh, we're all white. We're all one. We're a monolith. So then why should we?
Why should we? All right. So I'm going to continue with this PowerPoint real quick. And then we're going to hear from those of you who are going to be joining and are already joined. So here we go. So let's get down to some of what I'm going to call and just say is the nitty gritty here. So the group of rabbis that initially ruled that the Igbo community are part of the lost tribes of Israel are a Sephardic group of rabbis. Now, if you, meaning the audience, knows anything about some of the divisions that exist among Jews around the world, Sephardic Jews are, in a sense, similar and also, in a sense, vastly different from what people are calling Ashkenazic Jews. Many Sephardic Jews live on the continent of Africa. Many Sephardic Jews also identify as being African. And the great majority of Sephardic Jews represent what we call the darker Jews of the world. So the group that issued the ruling is known as the Obadiah Alliance, headed by Rabbi Yehonatan Elazar de Mota, Rabbi Chaim Ovadia, Rabbi Eliezer Tabor, Rabbi Jacob de Oliveira, Rabbi Hananiah Cohen. This was, from my understanding, spearheaded chiefly by Rabbi Yehonatan Elazar de Mota, which is at the far top right. It is him that you will see in almost all of the videos on YouTube speaking on this matter publicly and declaring it before the world. And once this ruling was issued, it was acknowledged by Jews world over. I'm sure there'll always be people that would, disagree, agree to disagree, maybe even give a side eye. But because of the vast knowledge, respect, and credentials of the rabbis involved in the ruling, no one dare question it halachically so as to enter into a public debate to try to fight the ruling. So as the ruling stands, the Igbo community have been officially recognized as part of the Lost Tribes of Israel by the Obadiah Alliance. Many of you may remember that I interviewed Rabbi Yehonatan Elazar de Mota right on my channel, to which we spoke briefly about that subject matter. I'm going to try to have him come back on to speak chiefly on that matter. Now, it's funny when they say like minds breed and think alike, because here you are mentioning Igbo Landing, and it's one of the slides that I had to present. So Igbo Landing, everyone, is a historic site at Dunbar Creek at St. Simon's Island in Glynn County, Georgia. In 1803, one of the largest mass suicides of enslaved people took place when Igbo captives from what is now Nigeria were taken to the Georgia coast. Moderators, I'm going to stop for a second. Moderators, I just want to remind you, if there's anybody in the comment section that is, engaging in dialogue that takes the comments away from the presenters as they're sharing in the video, by all means, give them a warning. If the warning is not heeded or acknowledged, then by all means, time them right out, y'all. This is not like other platforms where the speakers could be speaking about what color the sky is, and the people in the chat room is arguing about the NBA games. Either we talking about what the speakers are talking about, or we're not commenting, because that shows disrespect to the people presenting, that you're starting a whole conversation in the chat room that takes people away from what the presenters are saying. Clearly, you don't care. That's why you're continuing to type. But moderators, I'm going to ask that you guys do your job. When you see people doing that, give them a warning. If and when that warning is not heeded, guys, please time them out. If that don't work, make sure y'all block hands is quick. And here we go. We're going to set things straight on this platform. We don't play here at Zion Lex TV as we move on. So Igbo Landing, a historic site at Dunbar Creek on St. Simon's Island, Glynn County, Georgia. In 1803, one of the largest mass suicides of enslaved people took place when Igbo captives from what is now Nigeria were taken to the Georgia coast. In May of 1803, the Igbo and other Western African captives arrived in Savannah, Georgia on a slave ship called the Wanderer. They were purchased for an average of $100 each by slave merchants John Cooper and Thomas Spaulding to be resold to plantations on nearby St. Simon's Island. The chained slaves were packed under deck of a coastal vessel, the York, which would take them to St. Simon's. During the voyage, approximately 75 Igbo slaves rose in rebellion, took control of the ship, drowned their captors, and in the process caused the grounding of the ship in the Dunbar Creek. Now, I just want to quickly say that there are a lot of myths and legend that surround this particular area as well. Many of the locals believe that the spirits of the ancestors are still there and even haunt what we're going to call our colonizers, for lack of a more favorable YouTube term. Our ancestors are haunting the colonizers. Is there anything you want to say towards this point, Nasika, Howard?
I think what's very interesting about this is they actually were said to have been transported from the Bight of Biafra. That was the coast that they were transported from. And again, as I just alluded to earlier, the Biafra conflict between the Yoruba and the Igbos. And I do know, there are some, I did briefly glance at the chat. I know someone was saying that there are Yoruba Jews. So I don't know. I'm not going to say too much about that. But even the idea of the conflict on the ship itself always brings to my mind Amistad. And even in Amistad, I actually wanted to mention this earlier. You know, there's such a profound scene in that film where one of the kidnapped or enslaved Africans, which they, in that particular story, they were taken from Sierra Leone, if I'm not mistaken. But history and anthropology has verified that tribes in that region have descended from the biblical Hebrews as well. The Mende, I believe, was the name of the tribe. And so what's so interesting is in one of those scenes, one of the Africans is looking at the Bible and he's looking at the pictures and he's identifying with these pictures. And one of the enslaved or the kidnapped, I'll say, because they were released before they were taken into slavery. But I believe the one that's played by Jaimin Hansu, he says, you know, why are you reading this? Why are you so into this book? You know, that's their book. And he's saying it's telling a story, you know, and his identification with the stories that are told through those images, through those pictures, it speaks to the identity of the narratives in Torah that are ours. You know, this is about reclamation of what is ours. And so that scene is always very moving to me, to understand that the identification, again, as I said earlier, is not just a simple parallel. It's not just an idea of Africans or African Americans, so-called Africans or so-called African Americans, simply looking at the stories in the Bible and finding some semblance of commonality, but that this is our story that has been co-opted and appropriated by others and taken from us and revised in many ways. But coming back to the Igbo landing, we know that one of the greatest children's books, I think, in the African American community, is the Virginia Hamilton's The People Could Fly, this collection of folk tales that came from many of the stories passed down from the plantations. And the idea of the flying slaves who flew back to Africa derives from Igbo landing. And as I also mentioned earlier, my favorite author and inspiration of the writing that I do myself has always been Toni Morrison, and Song of Solomon, an allusion itself to Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, speaks greatly about this legend of the flying Africans. And this came from Igbo landing. The idea that, you know, the European historians call Igbo landing a mass suicide, but our people know that it was a flight, a return back, even a transcendence, perhaps out of the body physically back home. So it wasn't a suicide for us. And, you know, it's such profound mysticism there and esoteric meaning, even in this act, because we know in Torah, suicide is a very grave sin. So why would our people, knowing that they are the people of the book, so to speak, why would they commit mass suicide? There had to be a translation or a transfiguration through this experience. And I believe that the miraculous and supernatural phenomenon that occurred there has been suppressed in history to be written off and belittled as a suicide, when in fact it was something so much more profound. And I think it's funny, in that slideshow that you just showed, it says bow landing. It's almost as if they still want to obscure the origins. They don't even want to put fully Igbo landing,
right,
so that we can trace back our ancestry and our tribe. So you know, it's just interesting how so much effort is put into the obscuring of this very powerful moment that affirms who we truly are. And just as a last comment, anyone who's seen Julie Dash's film Daughters of the Dust, which I grew up watching, it was one of my mother's favorite films, and more recently, fortunately or unfortunately, Beyonce heavily referenced the film visually, and even in the cinematography of
she had a bunch of women lined up going to the waters.
Exactly. And that was a veiled reference to Igbo landing. So I just, it's so profound. And again, I believe some of our researchers and scholars could definitely come together to maybe put out some works researching some of the more esoteric meaning of that moment, as well as, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, if I heard correctly, Rabbi Mordechai mentioned the Kabbalistic meaning in the Negro spirituals, and our African rabbis coming together to kind of draw some of that out. So that's something I definitely would love to. I'm definitely excitedly anticipating that coming to the surface, to the forefront very soon.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. We're gonna pull up this PowerPoint once more, and here we go. So this is an actual slave sale poster. Many of you are familiar with it. It says many slaves were called Hebos, aka Igbos, a term denoting peoples taken specifically from Igbo land, Nigeria, a region officially recognized today as a lost Jewish community. If I could read the poster as much as I can, it says, to be sold on board the ship on the 12th day of the 6th of May next at Alfie Ferry, choice cargo of blank, 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 healthy, fine Hebos just arrived from the Windward and Rice coasts. The utmost care has already been taken and shall be continued to keep them free from the left danger of being infected with the smallpox. So this is essentially, everybody, a slave sale poster denoting the sale of us as chattel slaves, something regarded in history books and in history in general as a peculiar institution to enslave human beings like cattle, hence the term chattel slavery, as we continue. A person to follow that we mentioned, myself and Chief Rabbi Mordechai mentioned, is Remy Ilona. He can be contacted on Facebook. If there's anyone out there with a scholarly background or a leadership position that would like to contact him directly for purposes of deeper research on the subject matter, he is the foremost Igbo Nigerian authority and historian on the emergence of Igbo Jews in the world and their indigenous culture and connection to that of the biblical Israelites. I'm going to read here where it says, Rabbi Ilona is a PhD candidate at the University of California. By the way, this is old. Remy Ilona is no longer a PhD candidate. He just received his PhD from the University of California, Riverside, where he also functions as a teaching assistant. He's no longer a teaching assistant there. He's now a professor there. So this has to be updated. He is also the Secretary General of Hebrew Igbo People, an Igbo socio-cultural organization. He is also an author of 10 books. Again, this needs to be updated. Remy is an author of 20 plus books. He is of Igbo or Igbo extraction and a lawyer by training, as well as a historian of the Igbo people. He is among the leaders shepherding the Igbos re-emerging Judaism. What an amazing, amazing man. Moderators, somebody in the chat is asking you to block them. Please help them out, moderators. There's a lot of people with wrenches. I usually give wrenches to people that support the platform and show love, but the wrench is also there for a purpose, for you to help me out when I can't do all the work myself. So moderators, there is certainly someone in the chat room that is asking for you to block them. Please help them meet that requirement, moderators. That would be greatly appreciated. On that note, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Moderators, do what it do.
Caribbean Kitchen, Foods offer 7 unique blends of premium, low-sodium Jamaican seasoning that will add a burst of flavor to your dishes. Our authentic, all-natural Jamaican seasonings are a game changer when it comes to adding a burst of flavor to your dishes. Our products are kosher, all natural, contains ingredients that are gluten-free and GMO-free. Our seasonings are handcrafted with the highest quality ingredients. We source our ingredients from the Caribbean to capture the authentic taste of the islands. Unleash your creativity in the kitchen and savor the taste of the Caribbean with our spice blends.
All right, as we continue. And this, everyone, is the Chief Rabbi of Africa, Rabbi Pinchas Eliyahu Shaddai. Many of you may remember that he was joined on this platform right here as I interviewed him for the first time in the Israelite community. You guys may want to go back and revisit that interview. What a powerful interview. We did a total of 2 interviews together. So you guys want to definitely go back on my YouTube page and catch those interviews. They were very, very powerful. At this time, I also want to acknowledge some of our family that also sent some donations. I want to acknowledge KXNXN on Cash App. Thank you very much. And I also want to acknowledge Devon Yaakov on Cash App. Thank you very much for helping out to donate. As well as, again, Jesse Patton. Thank you very much for your donation. I appreciate that. So this is one of the rabbis that rule. So for all of you asking, where can we find out more on this? Where can we go? As I said yesterday, and as I said when this live stream began, right here. They wanted to use this platform to make the announcement because we are a larger platform than them, and they have great respect for the knowledge base shared here. That's an honor to what we do here at Zion Lex TV, that they elected that this news be told first in the community right here. So for those of you who are secretly hating, talking about what other channel I could go to so I could rip their video and put it up, because we know some of y'all is just haters of Zion Lex TV. What you're really trying to say is, Zion, where's the other video that's saying this so we can share that, not you? Whoop-de-woo is here. So if you want to find any information pertaining to it, you got to come right here. This particular day is an attempt to give a little bit more detail on the subject matter. So the rabbis ruling, as I'm going to show once more, are Chief Rabbi Pinchas Eliyahu Shaddai, as well as, and he's the chief, before I go on, Chief or Rabbi Pinchas Eliyahu Shaddai, everyone, is not only a rabbi and is not only a chief rabbi. Listen carefully, everyone. There are several rabbis that can belong to a state. There are even several more rabbis that can belong to a city and a state. He's not just a rabbi living in Africa. He's not simply a chief rabbi among rabbis in Africa. He is the chief rabbi of Africa. Put some respect on his name. He issued this ruling along with several of his colleagues that we African Americans and African Caribbeans, many of us comprise part of the lost tribes of Israel. And they have outlined a process of return that they're going to share for the very first time also on this platform, Zion Lex TV. Chief Rabbi Mordechai is also one of the chief rabbis involved in this amazing endeavor. Many of you see him weekly doing a Torah portion with me. We were gone for the summer, but we back. We are absolutely back. So there's going to be a lot more information, everyone, that details the actual process for return as it pertains to this overall topic. But we wanted the community to know and understand that the ruling has been issued and it is binding. No rabbi in the world, I want everybody to listen to me carefully. Once an official rabbi, especially a chief rabbi, issues a ruling, no rabbi in the world can overturn said ruling. There's no rabbi in any denomination that can come and say, oh, we're changing that. It's impossible. Cannot happen. Asika Hadassah, any closing thoughts?
I think it's so beautiful, the timing. You know, Hashem truly makes no mistakes in his divine timing. We are in the month of Elul, which, as an acronym, is an allusion to Shir Hashirim, Anila Dodi Vadodi Li. I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine. Or I am for my beloved and my beloved is for me. And this idea that the king is in the field. Elul is the month where it seems Hashem is closest in proximity spiritually to us, and his Shekhinah is in our midst, that we can cleave that much more closely to him. It is a time where we are called to seek him that much more fervently as we approach the judgment of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. But what's so important is Shir Hashirim, among many things, is an ode to this idea of this perpetual longing for the beloved, this desire to be united and continually reunited. And our path in life, even through the cycles of incarnation, is a constant descending and ascending, a constant separation to reconcile, even in the mysteries of mikvah, as it pertains to women and nidah, the separation from the husband and wife separated for a time to then reunite, especially most potently on mikvah night, to unite that much more intensely in that intimacy. All of this is symbolic of this dynamic between us and Hashem as the beloved. And this constant seeking for reconciliation is so potent in alignment with this halachic ruling, because truly we have been called and gathered as we have been longing and crying out for Hashem as a people, even without knowing who we were, calling out and crying out to him and seeking him so fervently that now he is drawing us to him. And by affirming our identity, it's that reclamation. It is our reclamation of our traditions, our culture, and our being as his. And so at this time, with us being verified, the so-called African American community now being verified as the Hebrews that we have always been, it is so interesting that as we now take strides to go through processes of so-called conversion and reinitiation and reorientation into what was always ours, this reclamation is that reunification that is symbolized in Shir Hashirim, and how potent and fitting for this alignment to come out during the month of Elul. And one thing I believe Rabbi Mordechai brought out earlier in the live stream that you all did this week that is so important for us to take note of is it's not a conversion to return back to the ways that are ours. It is, I believe he specified, it is a return to halakha. So the ritual aspect of conversion through these ceremonies, including circumcision, including mikveh, is not for these processes to be overseen by a people that are not us. I think that's something some of our people are a little wary of, you know, going through circumcision, going through mikvah, going through these ceremonies of reorientation and reacclimation to our halakha is not this idea of being converted to something that is other than us and being viewed by those other than us as an other. It is us reclaiming what's ours and these processes being overseen by our people. That's very important for us to realize and emphasize. So any ambivalence towards truly returning to this path, truly making teshuvah, and truly owning this identity, any ambivalence should definitely be assuaged by what you're bringing out today. And I am in Shabbat prep and I have my little ones that I have to tend to, so I will be sliding out. But Toda Rabbi, as always, Nasi, for inviting me to the platform to speak. And again, this is such a powerful a powerful, poignant moment for us as a people that we all should be reveling in and delighting in.
Thank you very much for joining us. And until we speak again, take care and Shabbat Shalom.
You as well. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, Ron Shabbat. I see you joined the panel. Shabbat Shalom, Mishpachah.
All right. All right.
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Jump in.
Okay. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. So I listened to a lot. I heard a lot. I've actually learned a little more than I knew before. I am going to come in here and play a little defense, however. Okay. I'm going to give the assumed opposed view that I would imagine would come from a lot of the people who are going to be opposed to this particular situation at hand. Okay. A couple of things I've heard. One, you spoke of a lot of people coming to the Israelite community and they don't last very long. And you said, well, the reason why they don't last very long is because, well, they come in with issues that they can't bring into whatever communities they come into, and that turns them off. And so they go their separate ways. Well, I'm going to say that is a part of it. That is definitely a part of it. But I'm going to speak from personal experience and say there's a little more to it than that. Okay. A lot of people come into this Israelite community, and the first thing that definitely has to be understood is there's a number of different communities to come into. We have three, I'll say the three major communities, and there's really five, but I'll just go with the three most known, right? There is the commandment keepers, Old Testament only. There's the One West, or the Messianic Hebrew Israelites, okay? And then there's the, since there's not a really particular name for our paradigm, I would have to say the first century Israelites. The reason why I say that only is because in the first century, they were in practice of the oral tradition, Kabbalah, and most or some Israelites were followers of the Messiah, and some were not, okay? But during that period of the first century, you could definitely see these practices in action, okay? So where a lot of people push back on, we'll say, the oral tradition, which is the major theme of this situation. Oral tradition being that in the oral tradition, it's going to speak of why you should reconvert, okay? Why it is necessary for reconversion, even though the first two being the major ones, the commandment keepers, Old Testament only, and the One West or Messianic Hebrew Israelites are opposed to the oral tradition and Kabbalah. Okay, so with the oral tradition comes further explanation and further depth and detail of the Torah and the Tanakh and even the New Testament, okay? The addition to that comes what the rabbis have put forth as new rules, okay? They've put new rules into the situation that aren't specified in the Torah or the Tanakh, okay? And there are debates that happen in the oral tradition that, for myself, is problematic because I don't get a definitive answer on a particular matter, okay? There are many areas where I do get a definitive answer on a particular matter. So when I hear a lot of the Israelites say, well, when they read a particular passage and they say, well, I don't know why we have to do this particular thing, but God said to do it, so I'm doing it. Okay, well, that doesn't sit well for me because I kind of like to know why I'm doing a particular thing. If somebody sends me on a mission, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't, I could be a blind soldier and say, okay, I'm going in, I'm getting this done. But I would kind of like to know the reasoning for this. Okay. I would kind of like to know what this is about, if this is the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. You know what I'm saying? I'm a kind of a person who does like to think for myself. Okay. When there are many of matter that come about where the only answer that I get is, well, I don't know why God is telling me to do this. I'm just going to do it. Well, if the oral tradition has that answer, why wouldn't you want to seek that answer out so you can know why the Most High God is telling you to do something that apparently you don't even understand why you're doing it? Okay. What if you're not supposed to be doing that? Don't you at least want to know that? Okay. So the oral tradition has that. And then, like I said, again, it has matters where you have certain things in there that right, wrong, or indifferent, a person like myself is going to be uncomfortable with. Now, that doesn't even say that what is being spoken of is wrong, but I'm still uncomfortable with it. Okay. Now, does that make me throw the whole baby out with the bathwater? No. A lot of people choose to throw the whole baby out with the bathwater because they come across something in the oral tradition that they're uncomfortable with. So they say, you know what? I'm not rocking with this. Okay. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying, hey, there's things in here I don't agree with. And I have a right to that. Okay. Whether that makes me right, wrong, or indifferent, there's things in there I don't agree with. I'm just not going to throw the whole baby out with the bathwater.
Really quick, because I don't want to forget what you're saying. So I'm going to inject at this point while I remember some of what you said. And I'm going to start with the last thing you said. So there are things you encountered in the oral tradition that don't sit well with you. So let me ask you this question. Among the things in the oral tradition that don't sit well with you, did you go over those specific things with a teacher in Israel that knows the oral tradition on those particular topics?
Negative.
Okay, so if I'm new to Islam, as you are new to this way of life, right? If I'm new to Islam and I'm reading the Quran, and there are things in the Quran that I understand, and there are things in the Quran that I may not necessarily have that great of an understanding for. So someone in this paradigm tells me, well, the Hadith comes to clarify many of the Quranic teachings. So, most likely the teaching for it, a proper or higher understanding will be found in the Hadith. If that person is responsible enough, they will tell you, though, that you need to go and speak with an appropriate leader and teacher, preferably an imam, that can help to guide you throughout the reading of that hadith. Because any matter of law, in terms of how to understand, how to adjudicate, and even how to view it, can be complex. So when you're reading a major body of work like the hadith, or like the Gemara, Talmud, or quote unquote oral tradition, it requires a teacher. So to me, it stands to reason that much of the reason why you're going to have problems reading it on your own is because you're reading it on your own. There have been many people that I have aided and assisted in understanding the oral tradition through them going through it with me. And I want to say 100% of them, I have a leave no man behind policy. 100% of them, after they went over with me, literally said, I never saw it like that. Wow, the first time I read it, I thought it was this. You not only read that passage, but you read the surrounding passages and made it clear what it is. So I have to stop you in this moment to simply say to you that, and this is also for our community, and this also applies to the Bible. The Bible equally deals with complex subject matter. So if we're running into issues reading it on our own, perhaps we also should be reading it with a teacher. But for me, I can't say perhaps. I run a whole academy. Of course, I believe that you need a teacher to receive a proper understanding of it. And I would say the oral tradition is even more complex. So if anything requires a teacher, it is more the oral tradition than it is the physical and literal text, because the oral tradition gets into very complex argumentation based on a very high level of awareness and knowledge. And if you're not there in your studies, well, of course you may encounter things you not only disagree with, but things that may be seemingly unfavorable, like, wow, what is this? So I wanted to speak to that point. to the point of people coming in and leaving for what could be a myriad of reasons. Some of those reasons being that, as you stated, in the Israelite community, there's this threefold structure, right? There's like the Old Testament Israelites, there's like this one West branch of Israelites, and what did you say with the third one again? I want to make sure I'm capturing what you said correctly.
First century Israelites, us.
First century Israelites, which is us, right?
Yeah.
So here's what's interesting about that. That's nothing new. Mainstream Judaism has three branches: Orthodox, Conservative, and Reform. And Orthodox Jews think both conservative and Reform Jews are idolaters and they go into hell. And conservative Jews and Reform Jews think the Orthodox guys got it completely wrong. They're just not as extra in seeing that they're going to go to hell as a result of not having this understanding. But trying to point out for you that there are vast differences in those circles. So sometimes I find in the Israelite community, when people come in and see that the way of thinking is not a monolith, it's not one way of thinking, it's not one way of teaching, but there are several different denominations and then three major different branches, that causes people to say, oh my God, like I didn't come here for this. You know, I just came out of this, I just came out of that. But everywhere you could tell me you came out of has a very similar structure of there being multifaceted and multi ways of thinking and looking at a text. And I always chop that up to what I call, anytime a person is reading a text and not properly understanding it, there's always going to be 2, 3, or more opinions, which the word escapes me at the moment, but it'll come to me. But by rule of thumb, any text, if there's the word ambiguity, any written text is subject to ambiguity, right? This right here is the Zohar, right? This is the Zohar. To add complexity to complexity, not only is this the Zohar, this is the Zohar written in Aramaic. So let's get a little complex on this now, right? Most Israelites can't read this Zohar. They'll be able to read this one, which is the English translation. But most won't read the one I'm holding because it's Aramaic. But here's where things get even more interesting. The style of writing of Aramaic for this is far post-Second Temple. So the structure of Aramaic here versus the structure of Aramaic in Ezra's time has evolved, has changed. So someone from Ezra's time would struggle with this, just as someone from this time would struggle with writings written during Ezra's era. So what I'm essentially saying and laying out for you then is any written text is subject to ambiguity, and that ambiguity can be a number of reasons. It can be translations, which can get complex, or it can simply mean you pick up a book and you read it and you get one thing from it. I pick up the same book and I read it and I get something altogether different. A third person picks it up, reads it, and doesn't see what you or I saw. And the first thing we have to understand is human beings are separated by their way of thinking first. Before it is the way that we look, before it's the way that we dress and represent ourselves in the world, it's the way that we think and express our ideas. So by rule of thumb, scholars acknowledge any written text is subject to ambiguity. So as a result, you should always expect that there's going to be a different way of thinking and seeing things, right? Even the Bible demonstrates that. You have the matter of Moses' cousin, Korach, who died and made you and Aaron the only priests. Last time I checked, we from the same line of Lewi. What you mean, only y'all the priests? Each man pick up his censer and follow after me. And Moses said, homeboy, I suggest you not do that. I'm paraphrasing. And Korach said, first of all, I'm older than you. And Moses said, I got that. But the relationship that I have with the Creator, me and Aaron, is greater than that which you have. I'm trying to help you out here. What are we talking about? Even the Bible demonstrates for us that people of the same knowledge base had different ways of thinking and seeing things. That's why in the time of David, you had some people that were actually ready to crown his son Absalom as king. There were people that were still loyal to him, that wanted to see him as king. Then there was a third party that didn't want either of them, that wanted somebody new. No matter whatever we in, no matter what generation we in, never expect a monolith. Human beings are too complex in our nature and our way of thinking for us to expect that there's always going to be one view. That's a fantastical utopia that will probably never exist. We're always going to have different ways of thinking. We're always going to have different points of view. This is why the Bible says the poor of the land shall never cease. There shall always be poor people in the land. And we be like, wait, hold on. You mean in this future utopian world that we may be going to, a world where everybody's righteous, there's still going to be poor people? Yeah. But everybody's righteous, so why would he be poor? Nobody's going to rob him. Being poor is first and foremost about mismanagement of financing. We could all be righteous, but if you decide that you want to buy Jordans instead of putting food in the house, guess who's going to be poor and guess who's going to be well fed? Catch my drift?
Definitely. So, okay. Now, what you said, 100% correct. The issue with that is when you're dealing with the two dynamics that you just described, you're dealing with quote unquote Black folks of the African diaspora, of the transatlantic slave trade. And you're talking about Ashkenazic Jews, whereas you have three different sects of both paradigms. The difference between the Ashkenazic Jew and the quote unquote Black person of America, or even the African diaspora, right, is the Ashkenazic Jew knows himself. He knows his history. He knows where he comes from. They all have one working language, or two if you want to go with the Yiddish as well, right? So they have, we'll say, two working languages, but they're not in disagreement with any of those languages. They agree with them, okay? Now, they may see things in different ways. As you said, no, there's no utopia in which everyone will be on one lockstep, single march. No, that's not going to happen that way. But when it comes to us, we come from hell, okay? We don't have a name. We don't have a background. We don't have a history. We have slavery, okay? We have the torment, the torture, obviously, the worst thing has ever happened to human beings in history, as has been told to me, as has been told to many others in history. Nobody on the planet Earth has the problem that the African diaspora has, in that we don't have a working knowledge of self. So because we don't have a working knowledge of self, we come from so many different backgrounds and paradigms that for those who are new, who come into the Israelite community, you have to choose one, or you're going to choose one, or you're going to end up in one. You may hear another that says, oh, well, you know, that language you're speaking, well, that's the Yiddish. You gotta rock with the Paleo Hebrew. And then they'll give you a history of the Paleo Hebrew that actually sounds respectable. I have to admit, the history of Paleo Hebrew is hard to argue. The language of Lashawan Kadash, that's a different story. But the history of Paleo Hebrew, hard to argue, okay? The three different dynamics with the Old Testament Israelites, I don't see that they soapbox and things of that nature. Do they do works of the community? Absolutely. Okay. The communal works that I see the One West Hebrew Israelites do, they're front and center. They're out there. They're in the field.
There's no community comparable to the street work and ethic of the One West camps. And that's why I always tell people, when you offer a word of critique to talk about what they're doing wrong, you need to first step up to the table and at least meet and measure what they're doing right. We'll continue.
So when you're talking about that aspect alone, a person like myself who has recently become very revolutionary minded, Well, the One West Hebrew Israelites, they got that on lock. Okay. Old Testament Hebrew Israelites, again, I'm sorry, I can't physically see their works, even though I know that they have works. The works I see are yourself, or say Mighty Hebrew. You know, I see those brothers, you brothers.
Can I ask you something? Because what you're saying right now is so important and remarkable that I think a definition is necessary.
Go
when
ahead,
you
please.
say the Old Testament community doesn't have the works, but among the people that you do see and have works, you mentioned, because you know we came from the Old, and Mighty Hebrew still in the Old. You mentioned me. You said I have work. You said Mighty Hebrew has work. So just for clarity, what's work? It sounds, like a stupid question. I apologize to you or anyone else if it sounds like a stupid question. But just so that the people are clear on what you're saying, what do you mean by works?
Okay, so what I mean by works is when most people think of a Hebrew Israelite, they're going to think of the One West Hebrew Israelites because they're more front and center. Does the Old Testament Hebrew Israelites have works? One, absolutely. There is no American Hebrew Israelite dynamic without the Old Testament Hebrew Israelites, period. Every other Hebrew Israelite that exists in the quote unquote African diaspora come from Old Testament Hebrew Israelites. It is a 100% fact. It is undeniable. We can stop the cap. We can stop playing any games. What I mean by works, quote unquote, is when I go somewhere. First of all, I didn't know there was a such thing as a Hebrew Israelite until my late 30s. That's just life, okay? But when I go somewhere, if the first thing I see when it comes to an open market of Hebrew Israelite work is the One West Hebrew Israelites over the Old Testament Hebrew Israelites, the first thing I'm going to ask is, okay, well, where are they other than their particular synagogues or temples or what have you? And what are they doing? Okay, where are they and what are they doing? Now, can I find these things? Of course. Why? Because a person like yourself and Mighty Hebrew don't put your work in unless you haven't A, been trained to do it, B, been experienced in do it, and C, know how to do it. The only way that comes is you've been in the work, period, because your predecessors have already been doing the work, have taught you how to do the work, have given you the examples of the work, and now you're following in their footsteps. What I'm saying is, other than persons like yourselves who are more on the front lines, you're a front line Israelite. Now, the Hebrew is a front line Israelite. One West Israelites are front line Israelites. All I'm saying about the Old Testament Israelites is I don't see a lot of front line work. You know way more than I know. So this is just my outside newcomer observation. I'm a newcomer to the game. Okay. So this is just my observation. You can give more depth to that than I can, of course, but I'm giving you my honest, observative assessment of the situation. Okay. So when
Pause there for a second. I want to jump in on that. All right.
Go ahead.
So I gotta work with me here because I come from the Old Testament community, so I'm not gonna say I'm a trod lightly because we are of no respect to persons. So I'm not trodden lightly, but I do want to take a quick breather before I say something. And I don't mean to laugh, but I mean I mean to be very serious. I say this in our classes very, very often, and I don't always get an opportunity to say it publicly because a conversation doesn't happen that gives me the opportunity to bring it up. I'm a very methodical person. If I'm talking about one thing, I'm in that area. So if and when an opportunity presents itself, like right now, then I'll address anything. So, I mean, you got to be Ray Charles to not see that the One West camps have more work in this community than anybody else. When people come to acknowledgement that they are Israelites, it is by far in majority due to the work of the One West camps. This is why I have a strong policy of not attacking fellow Israelites. It's a thing called humility, and it's a thing called respect for people's work. The humility part tells me that they're doing the work. I can see that they're doing the work. The Creator, whether I like it or not, whether you like it or not, whether we like it or not, is working through us all in one way, shape, or another. So what authority do I have to arrogate to myself that I need to make a public video making my brothers look bad for things that I disagree with them, mostly behind closed doors? So why would I want to demean the works of my brothers that is gaining great traction and showing much success because of tedious differences, when I could actually sit back and watch, point out to their leadership what I believe said problems are, without ever having to acknowledge it publicly so as to make the whole community look crazy? So I say that to say, you got to be Ray Charles to not see and acknowledge that the One West community at this point is at the forefront of spreading awareness of who we are. Now, we could debate about the quality of it, and we could debate about, you know, I'm gonna keep it at that. We could debate about the quality of it, but what you're not going to debate is the impact of it. They got us all beat, myself included. So to the point of the Old Testament community doesn't have works, I don't know if I could come out and say that, but if I was asked to compare, then yeah, I gotta say the One West community's got them beat by far. It is what it is. But I can't say that they don't have work. But what I would say to the Old Testament community is it's the quality of work that people are probably gonna want to see an upgrade, because the Old Testament community has amazing initiatives like food drives. They go out and they feed the poor. The Old Testament community has great works like putting together community-based events for Israelites that's open to the public. Where Old Testament Israelites can approve, and you got to be an arrogant son of a you-know-what. If I'm offering you words of improvement and you mad at what I'm saying, I just had to say that. Where the Old Testament community can improve is in taking this message and bringing it to the forefront more. If I were to be brutally honest, and in fact, I'm going to be brutally honest. Why do I say that? Because in the Old Testament community coming up, I would always hear that to behave a certain way and move a certain way as an Israelite is to be playing church. People who only showed up on church for Sundays, we call them weekend warriors. And we shouldn't expect more from them because after all, they Christian and they in the church. But let me say this respectfully. If you are Israelite, worse yet, an Israelite leader, and the only time we see videos from you are on Shabbat, you might be a weekend warrior too.
Now, what I want to say is I have to put respect on what you just said. There are especially two major pillars in the community that I have to put respect on their names. First being Chief Prince Nasik Zerishadai Ben Yehuda of Beit Da'ak Hakmabina. Beit Da'ak Hakmabina. Chief Prince Uziel Ben Levi of Beit Da'ak Hakmabina. Okay. Two pillars, right?
Hold on. I know you're not going to continue and don't say Shema Israel, headed by Nasi Gadol, Chief Principal. I know you. I mean, if that's what you was going to do, you're going to do what you're going to do. But I want to make sure that they're acknowledged as well.
Apologies. Okay. Again, you're deeper in these waters than I am. Whereas I know of, you know them. So there's a difference between that. There's a difference between knowing of and knowing them. You know them. I know of. Okay. Just like just like the other branch of the Akaf Mabina that is in North Carolina, right? There's
also no. I know why you're saying that, but so no, they're an actual older congregation. So you're talking about the Hebrew family of Charlotte. They're originally a congregation called B'nai Adat, and they're a much older congregation than both DCB and Shema, even though members of DCB and Shema come from that school of thought and were also there back then. But as a school of thought, the Hebrew family of Charlotte come from one of the oldest Israelite institutions, which B'nai Adat is among them.
Bars. Again, you know them, I know of. So let's be real about it. What you said, right? I would love to see the Old Testament Hebrew Israelite community on them streets banging the same way I see One West Israelites. You know what I'm saying? As far as obviously not the same way, but certainly with the same force and the same energy, because the goal is to get our people and bring them home. The only way you're going to do that is you got to get out there, you got to speak it. And for real, that includes myself. Can't talk about it if I ain't going to be about it. I have conversations with people in the streets. I don't soapbox, okay? Soapboxing is a big deal, okay? It takes a certain pair of avocados to soapbox, okay? You got to get out there and you got to put yourself out there and be willing for any and everything that comes with that, and a lot comes with that. The One West community has over the decades built a strong they built a strong organization of people who will do that, can do that, and do that. Okay. So I put respect on them for that. Now, oh yes, and definitely have to put respect on the fact that I hear Chief Uziel all the time saying, okay, well, this weekend or this week, we're going to do the food drive, or et cetera, the works that the Old Testament community does do. But what I'm talking about and what we're talking about is getting out there and really bringing this message hardcore to the community, whether they're received good or not, because let's just be honest, we ain't going to be received good regardless. Okay. Which brings me to my next point. All right.
Hold on. Before you move to that point, I wouldn't be real if I didn't acknowledge this. So one of the congregations that we mentioned, Shema Israel, they have taken to the street. I'm not sure if they're still on the street because I don't follow everything that they do. But the last time I checked, they have been on the street. They've been on the streets since about 2018-ish. 2018 circa. I could be wrong or off by a year, maybe 2017, but certainly within the last 2025, within the last almost 7 to 8 years, they have been on the street. I haven't seen any updated videos, because usually when they take to the streets, they'll have a cameraman and they'll show that they're on. So if everybody goes to Shema Israel, and I'm also going to plug them. I have a lot of respect for them. For those of you who may not know, this is the congregation that gave birth to Avdiel Ben Levi, what some people know later as Zion Lex. I come from another congregation initially, but I was only there about a year. That congregation is Beth Ab Shalom. But within a year of being at Beth Ab Shalom, I transitioned my learning into a place called Shema Israel, and that's where I transformed into what most of you guys know me mostly for today, except that my knowledge of the oral tradition came from outside learning and outside teachers. My knowledge of the oral tradition didn't come from any community in the Israelite community that I'm associated with. But I will still say that there are some teachers that planted the seed in my mind, such as may his memory be blessed, Chief of Chief Naphtali, and Crown Prince Zerishdai, who's still here. But to just say this before you move on, and I'm loving where you at, by the way, I'm gonna be honest. Because I mean, if we can't be told how we can improve, then the only thing we talking is arrogance, right? And as humble people, we should always be ready to accept critique, just like how we're ready to accept honor. In fact, a wise man once said, "Run in the direction of critique, and run away from the direction of honor." So they certainly take to the streets. I just don't know if they're still doing it in this moment, but I know if you go on their channel, Shema Israel HIC2, and you go down, you're going to see them on the streets. And that's the only Old Testament group that I've ever seen on the streets.
Now, here's what I'm going to tell you, a privilege that you and many others like yourself have, that myself and many others like myself don't. You come from New York, bro. Come from the Mecca, bro. You come from New York, USA. I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Love my city, by the way. But you know, my city is smaller than Brooklyn.
So where the black and yellow?
What happened now?
You come from Pittsburgh with a black and yellow, black and yellow.
Oh yeah. I mean, shoot, you can look at me. I'm black and yellow, so that helps with that. You know what I'm saying? So my city is smaller than Brooklyn, bro, and you got 4 more boroughs to work with. Okay, I'm already done. I'm Pittsburgh and done. You got Brooklyn. Not even,
you really is black and yellow. I'm looking at you now.
Yeah, definitely. You know what I'm saying? So you got Brooklyn and 4 more boroughs to work with. The access, the opportunities, the everything that New York City alone has to work with, as opposed to the rest of the United States of America, really isn't even fair. So, whereas you can have these experiences and see these works and know these things are happening in New York, I have yet, and in 4 years of being an Israelite, I have yet to even know where an Israelite congregation even is in my city. And trust me, I've looked, obviously. Okay. That's just in Pittsburgh. I don't know about the rest of the US, which has smaller towns, smaller communities, et cetera, where, as you already know, when it comes to African Americans, the 2 working Abrahamic faiths are Christianity and Islam. Israel is new to me and very much new to a lot of people. Whereas in New York, this been going on. In New York, this ain't nothing new to y'all. Y'all been doing this. It's really about who's with it and who's not. It's about who accepts it and who doesn't. But at least y'all are more than aware of it. Persons like myself and many other people are across the country. Israel is new to us. We're not aware of it. We don't know about it. We don't have teachers. We don't have congregations. We don't have soapboxers. We don't have people bringing this information to us because they don't even have it. Okay? It's only through social media in the past, 15, 20 years that Israel has really spread cross country as most powerful as it has, because most people don't even know that it exists. Okay. So when you have that situation, it makes it a lot more difficult to find these activities going on when most people don't really know about them. Okay. So when people come into this community and don't last very long, they're dealing with a number of things. Another major thing that they're dealing with, okay, is what was brought up earlier between yourself and Nasika Hadassah, okay? We're talking about African spirituality versus Abrahamic faith, right? And so you're bringing these 2 paradigms to the African diaspora, a people who have been beat to dust, for the most part, by white supremacy, okay, on a myriad of levels, for a myriad of centuries, in a myriad of ways, okay? And so now, when you have this option of who am I, where do I come from, what am I doing, and where am I going? I have option A, Abrahamic faith, who the main people that run these communities are either in Islam, you have the Arab community. In America or in parts around the world, you have the Caucasian community when it comes to Christianity or anything in that nature, right? And then you have us, these African diasporic Black people, who are piggybacking on either of the two. We're picking one of the two of these. We're either going with Islam or we're going with Christianity. Now, as you already said before, both Islam and Christianity have a very diverse aspect of, worship. Okay, Catholic, Protestant, et cetera, et cetera. We can go on and on. And then there's, of course, Sunni Muslim, Nation of Islam, et cetera, et cetera. We can go on and on. Okay, so, and now, as I said before, now you have Israel, which has its differences. Some are going to flock more to the one West. It feels more, I'm gonna keep it all the way a buck. It feels more hood, first and foremost. It feels more hood, and feels like they're giving a stronger push to change, a stronger push to Black power. Just call it what it is, right? And then there's, the Old Testament Israelites, and then every other branch that follows from them. Okay. Right. But basically, when we're talking about Israel, talking about Judaism, and who runs Judaism, as we know, Ashkenazic Jews. So what they're saying is, well, we're just piggybacking off of them. And then you have African spirituality, which speaks more to the quote unquote soul of the Black man and or woman. Okay.
Just a moment. Because it's YouTube, I want to say,
be careful what I say.
The views and ideas of everyone that speaks on Zion Lex TV is not necessarily the views and ideas of Zion Lex TV. This is a disclaimer. So if there are any tropes that may be conceived as tropes that may be mentioned or said, we want everyone to know and acknowledge, especially the members at YouTube, that the views and ideas said and spoken at Zion Lex TV are not representative of all of the views of Zion Lex TV. This is a free speech platform where people are able to speak unless YouTube corrects and tells people what they need to say. And then, of course, we make our moves to another platform.
I have to say, you said that perfectly. I'm going to have to learn that. So when I speak my thoughts, I know what to say first and foremost before I speak those thoughts. So I'll be honest, myself, okay? When I came in learning about Yisrael, before I even knew that I was learning about Yisrael, and this is a period of maybe 14 to 16 months, I came across Dr. Yosef ben Yochanan, okay? When I came across him, he said that, hey, the 10 Commandments come out of Egypt. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Now, keep in mind, I'm in my late 30s, okay? I have been of the Christian mindset, not so much the Christian practice my whole life. During my adult years, I wasn't an active Christian, but literally 1 year out of my adult years. My Christianity came from where most people's Christianity comes from, your childhood, where your parents, mainly either your mother or your grandma, drag you to church 8 days a week, 4 times on Sunday. Okay. So that's where most people get their Christian doctrine from. Some people take it into their adulthood. Some people don't. Okay. So here it is. I'm hearing this man tell me, okay, the 10 Commandments come out of Egypt. So I look that up and I see that it does. Right now, what I don't do is I don't humble myself and I don't be patient, and I don't do what you said earlier, which is find a teacher. Another thing about the teacher thing, many people don't have access to that. Because when it comes to the oral tradition, it's already bad enough that most of these paradigms, most of these segments of Israel don't deal with the oral tradition. The ones who actually do deal with it are biased about it. And then there's not somebody who is actually into it or following it or practicing it that is going to give them an honest and truthful and in-depth study of it, where most people would have to go, where they don't want to go, to the Ashkenazim. They're not going to want to go to the Ashkenazim to learn how to do something that they're already in disagreement with anyway, because now you're shooting with two guns at somebody who ain't trying to get shot at, period. Okay? So that's very problematic when it comes to... I'm sorry?
And of course, we're speaking figuratively.
Exactly. Okay. You know, like you said, when I come across something in the oral tradition that I don't agree with, and I've come across a few things that I don't agree with, keep in mind, I've come across more things that I do. I've only come across some things that I don't. Okay. When you say, well, what you need to do is you need to find a teacher to sit them down, to sit you down and teach you this. I don't have direct access to that. I don't have direct access to a teacher who can say, okay, well, I see what you're seeing here. Let me take you to what this is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We can break this down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Give me a better working definition and understanding of what it is I'm looking at and don't agree with. Okay. So that's another major problem when it comes to the oral tradition. You only have so many sources of which to learn this from. And either you don't have a direct source, is what you're talking about, or you have to go to the source where most people in our world don't want to go to, which is the Ashkenazim. We don't want to go there and learn that. I can go to an Ashkenazic rabbi, because they have plenty of those out in Pittsburgh, and I can sit down and I can learn the oral tradition. I'm going to keep it a buck. I don't want to. Is that bias on my part? Is that ignorant on my part? Is that foolish on my part? Yes. But I'm being honest with you. I don't want to do it. Okay? So I promise you, I'm not the only one who's thinking that way. Okay? So back to my earlier point, when it comes to our people and why we don't stick around very long, when you give them the two options of African spirituality and Abrahamic faith, as I said, I jumped off the boat for quite some time, and I actually started going with African spirituality. It took the Most High wringing me by the neck, you know what I'm saying, putting his great spin on my thinking to say, hey, you're going down the wrong river. First of all, I'm going to put you on the right path. Second of all, I'm going to punish you for going down the wrong river. Okay. And then that's the third thing, right? A lot of people get off of this boat or stop following Abrahamic faith, or Yisrael rather. Yisrael. Let's keep it at Yisrael. The judgments of the Most High God are overwhelmingly extreme. Okay. I said there's things in the oral tradition I don't agree with. There's things in the Torah that I don't agree with. Okay. The Torah is an extreme body of work. The oral tradition is an extreme large body of work. The Torah is an extreme body of work. Okay. There are things in the Torah that are a major turnoff. It is a fact. Okay. One of those things being slavery, another of those things being the judgments of the Most High God. Okay. These judgments are extreme and they are a turnoff. Okay. So when most people who are new to this come into this, when I hear that, oh, the reason why I'm in slavery, it's not simply because of the whole act of taking people from Africa, making them slaves, et cetera, This is just a horrible event in history that happened. We hope it never happens again, and blah, blah, blah. Negative. I'm hearing that my God that I serve and worship did this to me. The God that I serve, worship, pray to, sacrifice to, humble myself to, is the one who put my ancestors in slavery and myself in slavery, because I understand I'm not free. That's a story for another day. But
I want to say something to you too. I can agree that there are things that we read in the Bible at times that make us second guess the writing. That's a fact. I used to wrestle with how harsh certain judgments are, especially now as a father and having a family. Absolutely. But I'm in a very secure place at this stage of my learning where I accept all of the Torah and all that she affords, you know, her statutes, her decrees, her laws, and her judgments. So, I mean, what you're pointing out is something that is a reality. There are people that feel the exact same way at one time, even myself. So could you give us just two examples? That way we try to cover a little ground. Two examples of a judgment in the Bible that is disagreeable for you because it's too extreme, or for whatever reason it's disagreeable. So I want to know what those two judgments are. Why do you have a problem with them? Like, what is your problem with them? And for what crime are they judgments of?
Let's go with one of the more, or I could even say, probably the harshest judgment that I see, right? And you could really say captivity is, but let's just go with let's bring it to a finer point here. If a young woman who is the daughter of the high priest is found not to be a virgin on her wedding night, she is to be burned alive. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but I would think that A, burning anybody alive is terrible, and B, to burn one's daughter alive, A, and a member of the community, B. Because let's just keep in mind, yeah, she's the daughter of the high priest, but she's been a member of the community for apparently 18 years. People know her. People are her family members. People are her friends. People know this person, okay? And here it is, for whatever the reason, she is not a virgin on her wedding night. Sometimes things are intentional. Sometimes things are not. Accidents, even though we can say if this is an accident or not, accidents happen. People find themselves at moments of weakness, whether they meant to or not. People find themselves in moments of weakness. The body is a physical machine that is wired for desire, period. The body is a physical machine that is wired for desire. It takes a great amount of strength and humility to deny ourselves the things that we long for the most on a daily basis. That's whether you are a quote unquote religious person or not. It takes a great amount of humility and strength to deny ourselves the things we desire on a daily basis. I think Sean Combs might be a good example of that. Maybe. Okay. So anyway, when one's daughter is high priest now, is found not to be a virgin on her wedding night, she gets burned alive. That's a pretty serious thing. So now not only does the high priest, who this is his daughter, have to watch his daughter be burned alive, so does the rest of the community who have an attachment to this young woman in some way, shape, form, and fashion. That is traumatic, fam. You are going to be traumatized by that if you're a human being at all. That is a fact. Second thing, stoning people to death, okay? There's a myriad of reasons why you could stone somebody to death. Again, not being a virgin on one's wedding night, just being the woman, and it doesn't have to be the high priest. It could be anybody. If this woman is found not to be a virgin on her wedding night, and she cannot, and her parents cannot prove that this is not the case, she gets stoned to death on the door front of her father's house. So now say this is my little girl. Every time I go in and out of my house for the rest of my life, I always have to step over the threshold where my baby girl got stoned to death in front of my crib, fam. Okay? Trauma. That's just two. And we can go with captivity as another one. But you wanted two, that's two.
Thank you. So the first one that you stated was the daughter of a high priest who was burned alive for
not being a virgin on her wedding night.
For not being, and what was the second one?
Well, stoning. That, you stone people to death for a myriad of reasons, but I only used one example, which again is not being a virgin on your wedding night for any young woman.
Okay. Pun intended, but I'm gonna use one stone to kill two birds. Pun intended, since we're talking about stones. If the daughter of a high priest is found not to be a virgin on the night of her marriage, she shall be stoned to death with stones. In any religious-based society that has judgments for the community based on its religious ideas, they tend to be very, very strict. And ironically, many of those societies don't have the levels of crime that we do. So for instance, some of the safest places to be in the world are some of the places that have very, very high religious authority in place. Because when a lot of people think of what can happen to me if I do this thing, that thought leaves their mind immediately. I always give this example in class. I used to be I still am an avid follower of many of the speeches and lectures of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. In fact, I wore this shirt today, but we're gonna leave that alone. But what I'm gonna say now is in the 90s, the early 90s, when I used to watch his lectures, his speeches on VHS, there was one particular speech that really impressed me more than the others. And it was where he said he had visited Saudi Arabia. He was given an invitation to visit Saudi Arabia. And the day that he came, they invited him to a stadium. And, coming from America and Farrakhan, New York City, you think of a stadium, you think of a sporting event. He get there, he don't know what the event is for. But at some point, he realized somebody about to die today, because they had invited him for what is a public beheading. Saudi Arabia is one of those countries that still have public capital punishment where people could actually see. So like in America, if somebody goes to the electrocution, which I'm not even sure that they still do that here in America, but there still is a death penalty in America. I'm not sure what the judgment is though, the way in which they help people to leave. But years ago, you could actually watch somebody being electrocuted to death, or somebody getting an injection, lethal injection, et cetera, et cetera. But they would do it, privately for a few people, the family of the victim, and then like reporters and other witnesses. Saudi Arabia does it public in a whole stadium. And Farrakhan said, in a very amazing way of illustrating this, he said, a big burly black man with a scimitar sword. That's that thick Arabic, sword with the curve on the top. The sassy men probably like that language. And he said this man held up that scimitar and read the crime of the person about to be separated from life. And he said, when that man's hand went up, all of the audience said, Allah, what? God is great. That hand came down and that man's head was separated from his body. Farrakhan said, when you look around in the crowd, you could see the look on people's faces that this thing had seized and gripped them in spirit. And he said, I can guarantee you, every single man in there, because the particular guy's sentence was there for rape, any guy in there that had an idea of raping or touching somebody, that idea left his body completely because of the grossness and serious nature, graphic nature, in way in which he just witnessed this person died. So that stiff penalties that can be administered in a way that is, I don't want to say so much grotesque as much as I want to say placing fear on your heart, can be so impactful that it could be a huge deterrent towards somebody committing said crime. So the Bible certainly has very stiff penalties, and they are chiefly and mainly in place to serve as a deterrent. Statistically, most religious societies that judge their people based on the actual law don't have the level of crime that other countries do. So America is very lenient. You could shoot up a whole school. Say you had a bad day and your name is Timmy, and they treat you to Wendy's, give you a couple Prozac, and you back on the block in 6 months to shoot up the next school. Try that in Saudi Arabia. Not only will you probably never see the light of day again, but anybody thinking of going into a school and doing what you just did, they're going to know that that's not the thing to do. So while I'm saying that to you, I want to show you this screen. It's from the oral tradition. It's the Mishnah, Makot 7a through 7b. Preventing a violent court. In Maseket Sanhedrin and Maseket Makot, we have been learning about the various punishments meted out by the Beit Din. In point of fact, how often was capital punishment carried out by the Jewish court system, of course, of old? According to the Mishnah on today's daf, which is the daily Mishnah, if the Sanhedrin killed a single individual just once in 7 years, it was considered to be a destructive or violent Beit Din. Rabbi Elazar says that if this is true, if the court kills someone even every 70 years. What are they saying? It is considered in the oral tradition that if just one person is put to death in 7 years, the Beit Din is considered a murderous Beit Din. Another rabbi said, no, if one person is put to death by the Beit Din in 70 years, it is considered a murderous Beit Din. What are they saying? Judgments as meted out in the Torah very rarely ever needed to be handed out to a person. Why? Because the judgment itself was so fearful that it stood as a deterrent for people committing that crime. So in biblical times, in the days of the temple, it was a saying among the people, if one man is put to death in 7 years, the Beit Din, the ruling body, the judicial body, can be considered a murderous judicial body, meaning that they must be poorly inspired and influenced that this thing was even allowed to happen, the crime itself. Because the punishment is so egregious, it's a strong deterrent against crime. When you look in the Bible and you see instances of a person being stoned, I guarantee you, you can't use your two hands to count how many people the Bible says were stoned. You could try it. You can't use your two hands. Now, I want you to think about this. The history of the Bible covers almost 3 millennia, and you can't even use your two hands to show each time in the Bible how many people were stoned. So yeah, it's harsh. Yeah, it's tough. But if one person got to die miserably so that 100,000 people don't commit the same crime, it's worth it.
So, and I'm really trying to hurt because I see somebody else who wants to come in. Okay. And, you know, these conversations here could extend for great lengths of time. When you're talking about the tinok, you got me on the Torah. Don't see many people being stoned. See a lot of people dying, not being stoned though. Okay. When you're talking about the tinok, when we're talking about from Judges on up, it ain't being recorded how many people are getting stoned. But when you're talking about a people who repetitively, we're talking about through Judges, all throughout time until the destruction of the second temple, bringing us to this beautiful world we're in today. You're talking about a people who, even though they had these capital punishments, were persistently and continuously sinning over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, to where not one but two temples had to be destroyed. For those who believe that the Messiah had to come. The tribes were split 10 to 2. Okay. We're talking about a myriad of, 4 captivities that happened. We're talking about a myriad of punishments that came down on a people, which is why Christianity puts no respect on us, because they say, well, you guys just couldn't get it right, so now we took over, right? That's what they say. You guys just couldn't get it right, so it's ours now. We took over. Okay, it's all about the Gentiles now, because the Jews failed, because y'all just couldn't get it right. It doesn't record how many people, and I would assume several people was getting stoned and or heads cut off, and or the myriad of, there's a lot of different types of judgments that come with the Torah. The Torah has many different judgments. I mean, you're getting stoned or even whipped. Like that one throws me off, right? Why? Because slavery throws everybody off. When you take the Torah and you equate it to, wow, these are a lot of things that we have gone through in slavery.
May I ask you a question? You think I want you to speak, strongly as you are. Continue to speak strongly as you are, because I'm going to try to meet you at equal footing. Okay. Do you think it is demeaning for a grown adult to be whipped?
Yes.
Okay. So let me ask you a question. If right now in this country, a group of politicians, senators, began to pass and legislate law that said for various laws being committed, from now on, no jail time, but public whippings for said crimes. Let me be very poignant when I ask you to be honest with us.
Mm-hmm.
How many people do you honestly think would be willing to subject themselves to a public whipping versus doing a month or a year in jail? Be honest.
Very, very few.
Very, very few. Would you agree that most men, but let's say because we're black, especially black men, would find that extremely demeaning, and as a result would make sure to the best of their ability that they're not put in a situation for somebody to embarrass them like that? Be honest.
You talking about embarrassing. I'm more worried about what that whip gonna be doing in my back. You feel what I'm saying?
So let me ask you this now.
The embarrassment part comes into play.
Hold on one moment. I want you to think about something, right? So I think most people will agree that if they started saying all this drug dealing that's happening, that's tearing up the black community, and even some of the shooting that's not fatal, that's non-fatal, because if you shoot and kill somebody, murder, then you deserve to get whatever the system imposes upon you. The Torah says death. But non-lethal shootings, they start saying you're going to be publicly whipped. I think me and you and several people here know and understand well, a lot of people are going to be thinking 2 and 3 times before they do certain things. In New York City right now, children are subway surfing and they losing their head left and right. I mean that literally, not figuratively. They losing their head left and right from subway surfing. Why? Because the majority of them that don't die from it, when they get caught, they get community service. No jail time. You think they'd be doing that if they get whipped for that? So I'm trying to tell you that although I agree with you about the harshness of various judgments in the Bible being something that I deeply wrestle with, I want to still be honest with you in telling you that when you look at the track record of most countries that have very, very stiff penalties for various crimes that are committed, you typically find in those countries that those specific crimes are much lower there than they are in the US, because the US imposes lenient judgment towards the same crimes. Way more of them happen here because outside countries are way more strict and stern when it comes to the judgment of said crimes, way less there. I got to tell you right now, once again, even though as a human being, you wrestle with the nature of the reality of something that egregious, I'm going to tell you again right now, and I mean it with all my being, every fiber in my body. If one person has to go through something, right, egregious as a judgment for something they did wrong, especially the taking of life, then guess what? That is necessary if and when it becomes as a strong deterrent to prevent other people from doing the same thing. You know, right now in New York City, and it's been this way for a long time, you're going to get more time in New York City for selling crack cocaine than you would for shooting and murdering your brother. That's a fact. I'm not sure if it's the same where you live, but I could tell you right now, in New York City, if you get caught with crack cocaine, you're going to get more time for shooting somebody, whether it be lethal or non-lethal, very often. You know how many people in New York, and I can only speak for where I live, shoot and murder somebody. It's their first offense. And they home in 4 or 5 years. Get caught with a key of that yayo and have the judge tell you 10 years in New York, you'd be happy. Because they give you football numbers for a kilo of that yayo in New York. 10 years is a joke in New York. They give you football numbers. It's 25 to life damn near. But go ahead and shoot your brother. Shoot another black man. They don't give a hell about that. So the judgment is much more lenient. So I can join in with you as a human being first. Forget as a spiritual person. Forget as a religious person. Forget as an Israelite. As a human being first. And say that, yes, the death penalty judgments in the Bible, they're very scary. But they're also the reason why in the oral tradition it says, if one person was killed in 70 years, it was considered that the Beit Din, the judicial body, was murderous because most people wasn't committing them types of crimes. Because the judgment was so stiff, people already knew, I might do this, I might do that, but the judgment for that is this, so I'm not doing that. So while I agree with you that, damn, if it happens to you and it's your child or your brother, your sister, or you, yeah, you're going to be like, wow. But at a certain point, right, diplomacy kicks in thinking. And what I mean by diplomacy and thinking is this. When something happens to your family member, you're always going to be biased. So let's say the president of the United States, and not let's say because it literally happened, has a druggy son. Sounds familiar? And that son might be deserving like real time, but because it's his son, it gets swept under the rug. But other people's children got to do football numbers. But it's okay because it's your son. So here's what's crazy. The same punishments that we'll look at in the Bible and we be like, damn, that's egregious, that's tough. Oh, I wouldn't want that to happen to me and my loved ones. Let somebody rape someone close to you. you're going to be looking for them Bible judgments for that person. I know that in my heart and in my soul, that every single one of y'all that's looking at the screen right now, like, ooh, the Bible is crazy. Let somebody rape your daughter. You're going to want the Bible judgment over this system's judgment. We all know that. So what I also want to say in this moment is we got to be honest with ourselves.
I'm going to go ahead and second that motion, because when I hear these arguments on the other platforms where they definitely come up, okay, and these arguments about these judgments are spoken of and what have you, that is always my thought, that if these particular things happen to either you or your loved ones, whatever your level of judgment is going to be, and I certainly doubt it's going to be a slap on the wrist, you putting in that work if you built like that. If you built like that and you could get away with it, you putting in that work. Some people don't even care about getting away with it or not. If they built like that, they putting that work in based on, as you said, whatever that work needs to be put in on, was caused. Whatever caused that reaction, that's coming down the pipe, period. Okay. So, and that's if you built like that. Not everybody is, but for those who are, whether you get caught or not, right? People putting in that type of work based on what you did to either me or my loved one. And that's just a fact. So yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly when it comes to, biblical judgments. But I do know for a fact that these are reasons why people are quote unquote turned off. Okay. So
I don't mean to stop. I don't mean to stop you, but I have to stop you because we have Rob Zafone that joined on.
Right.
I literally should have been gone an hour ago, but I stayed on because I had you waiting behind scenes so long. So I said to myself, you know what? You was behind scenes so long. I got to give you the same time that I gave our sister that joined. I don't want to be impartial to you. So, and that's what I did. But now we have Rob Zafone, and I literally don't have more than 5 minutes, unfortunately. So I want him to join on and share what he want to share. But I want to thank you so much for what you said, because one thing I tell you in the classes, and I say to you privately, and I now have the opportunity to say it publicly, you play a mean job of devil's advocate, in that you ask the hard questions. You ask the hard questions that a lot of people are thinking but don't want to say. And for that, your value is like beyond value, because you're gonna say what people be thinking, and they're gonna say to their man, they're gonna say to their friend, but they're not gonna come on this platform and say it out loud. So I want to say before you leave, thank you very much just for being who you are. I appreciate that about you. That don't mean that we always will agree, but I appreciate the fact that A, you're not a yes man, and B, you're going to raise those questions that people are thinking but afraid to say.
Toda.
All right. Rob Zafone, it's on you.
Shalom, thanks. Really not gonna even take that much time, but first I want to say shalom to you, Nasi, and shalom to the family. So I was listening to Brother Ron and some of the stuff that he was saying. I completely understand where he's coming from, but one thing we always got to recognize and realize, and it kind of ties into the subject of the live, where with that wonderful announcement, right, about the status of our people being recognized from rabbis that look like us and stuff like that. But we got to remember, we are children of a diaspora, right, where we've, especially in America, or like our people say, Babylon, that system where people they grow up and they're used to their laws and regulations and how they pacify certain things and make other things put other things in the spotlight, right? And which is completely goes against what our Torah system is based off of. So I completely agree that if we grew up, look at things from the lens of Torah and realize the judgments for the actions that we take, if they're especially wrong actions, then more people will be less likely to commit those atrocities. But it's because we are coddled in this country, or we see people get coddled in this country, right? In other countries that are similar, that have a similar system, we look at, okay, the risk and the reward factor, where we could take this risk, and if we do get punished, certain people get a slap on the wrist, right? And stuff like that. So I think this American system has sissified a lot of us to the point that now with the ones that are awakening and then see the reality of what our system should be, they get a little put off. And, that's something that we need to address first within ourselves, but also within the community, because it is a deterrent. The other thing about the oral tradition is, yes, the oral tradition really is a game changer if you have the right knowledge or teacher behind you, right? Obviously, me and you and I, spoke behind the scenes. I had a bunch of questions in the beginning, didn't understand, but you were able to elaborate and show me how it ties into the Torah, right, in itself, and where it's coming from. And then on top of that, we have those wonderful rabbinical courses. So for a brother like Brother Ron, who I know attends a lot of classes, I'll still challenge him to say, hey, if you want to delve deeper, join the rabbinical courses and learn from Nasi, because with that, your understanding will multiply, and you probably wouldn't have the same questions that you have now, right? And I'll challenge anyone to do that, because like you said, the access to people within our community is very limited, and some people don't feel comfortable going outside to other communities to find those answers. The only way we change that is so we have more of us in our communities to lead our communities spiritually, right? So we need everyone to, who's willing, get on board, join the classes, and be that pillar in the communities that we need, so that way we can have those look towards each other for those particular answers. And the very last thing which is, I just want to say this: Yeshua, the example of Yeshua, he died as a martyr, right? His punishment was to take on all our sins, and then we see what happened when he took on all our sins. He died, and that led to a lot of other people who didn't believe to start to believe. So again, sometimes the punishment in itself can be an awakening as well as a deterrent. And one of the greatest examples that we have within the text is Yeshua. And I'll leave it at that.
That is so powerful. Thank you so much, Rav Zafon, one of our newest rabbis here at Learn Torah Hebrew Academy. Also, I want to say congratulations to you publicly on this platform for becoming a rabbi. And I just want to remind you that we need an interview with you very soon as we can get one from you.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll touch base with that, and we'll set it up. I would love to do that and just address the community and let them know who I am and what led me here, as well as your influence in my life. So I really do appreciate that. And we'll talk.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so very much, Rav Zafon, for joining, and thank you for patiently waiting to join in the conversation. Have a great Shabbat, and hopefully I'll see you this evening in the Shabbat in our rabbinical class.
Okay, Shabbat Shalom.
All right, Shabbat Shalom. All right, family. This has been a very, very powerful live stream. If you have not supported the platform yet, now is your opportunity to. You can support the platform by sending a donation via chat app, via Cash App at $Zion Lex or $Learn Torah. With your help, we can continue to open up shop here during the week, during the day, or during the night, and hold these amazing podcasts that are clearly illuminating and edifying for the community. I want to thank Morey Ron Shivat for joining at the tail end and adding and making such a powerful dialogue with the amazing questions and points that he raised. I want to also thank Nasika Hadassah for her poignant and always very, very eloquent way of thinking and seeing the Torah, our culture, and just our history. And I also want to thank our listening audience for tuning in. I want to thank our moderators for being here. And I want to say, in the words of our brother that was here last, Rav Zafon, and speaking of the Mashiach, that he said something very powerful that the moment he said it, I said, I need to say this publicly. He said that, when you consider it, the Mashiach died, right, for our sins. And for people who don't believe in Yeshua as the Mashiach, I will say to you that whether you believe Yeshua is the Mashiach or not, Isaiah 53 clearly describes that a messianic figure would die for the sins of the masses and multitudes of the people, and that through his death we would live. So the judgments in the Torah, the death penalty, the capital punishments in the Torah can be harsh. But if somebody needs to die so that millions more can live, then that's a necessary consequence. And this is a very powerful idea. I hope that everybody gleaned. I hope that we all learned. And this is the reason why I ask you guys to support what we do here. I don't personally think that anybody does it quite like we do. I could be wrong. If you see merit in this platform, then I see you supporting us. On that note, everyone, have a great Shabbat. I hope you all have a great day. And shalom. Peace. And I'm out.
All right. It's your brother Zion Lex. Sign up for our online academy, which is Learn Torah Hebrew Academy at patreon.com/Learn Torah. There are several classes that we offer. We offer a Biblical Hebrew 101 class for beginners. We have a Biblical Hebrew 102 class for people who are a little bit more advanced. We also have a weekly Torah class. We also have our Patriarchs of the Covenant course, our Matriarchs of the Covenant course, and a bi-weekly Rabbinical course. All of these courses can be found on Patreon. Again, that's patreon.com/Learn Torah. You guys were definitely in for it. It's a very invasive class. All of our classes are deeply invasive and very, very meticulous to the T when it comes to understanding the culture, the heritage, and the history of our ancient ancestors. So sign up for Biblical Hebrew at patreon.com/Learn Torah. I am your brother, Zion Lex.
Shalom, shalom, family. This is your brother Abdiel Ben Levi, otherwise known as Zion Lex. Go to Amazon and purchase all of my books. Type in my author name, Abdiel Ben Levi, or you can also type in Zion Lex. There you'll find some of my earliest books and my latest works. It was written and engraved. The DNA of Sound, The Star of David Controversy, Ancient Kemet on Trial, Patriarchs of the Covenant, Matriarchs of the Covenant, and my two foremost books that are critically acclaimed on Amazon, and even one has become a bestseller, and that's going to be the Messiah Codex Volume 1 and Messiah Codex Volume 2. So go to Amazon.com today, type in my name, Abdiel Ben Levi, otherwise known as Zion Lex, and there you can purchase all of my books. Peace and shalom, family.
I was personally very amazed by your level. Was not judgment at all. I did not knew. But what I've seen today in many yeshiva that put my legs where I went through, many are not at your level at all. And I will really say to all the people who study under you to believe that they have a real master. Because the way you receive us, the way you explain the Torah, the fire you bring through your explanation, it's like a stamp on the fact that you are a real one, a real sage. It will be my honor to share, to talk more about Learn Torah Hebrew Academy.
All right, perfect. So again, it's amazing to be here with Rav Zion and just, having this conversation. And the conversation is great. It's also, I also feel like it's a gift for me as well. Like there's so many deep and amazing insights that Rav Zion brings out, and it gets me thinking. And when I look back on these conversations, on YouTube, I hear a lot of the things he's saying again, and it's like, wow, that was really deep. And I talked to other rabbis too in our community, and they were like, yeah, I saw the thing you did with Lex Zion. It's like, and I was like, yeah, it's like, they're like, he knows a lot. And I'm like, yeah. Like, but like they said, he's like, he knows a lot,